Hello everybody, welcome into our latest live video. Uh-oh, hold on a second. Um, that ought to fix it. Welcome into our latest live video. My name is CareyHolzman. Today it is the 10th of December 2024. We were playing around with a different capture card the other day, and I had to put this original capture card back in. And then there was a setting I forgot to change regarding audio. So it took 30 seconds. I apologize for that awkward start. But hey, that's normal here. Are you new? Thank you for coming in. And let's say hello to everybody joining us in the chat room. We've got Darren Gilholm and Michael Sayers saying hello. There's Mark Baggett and 3D Everything and Marsman50 joining us here in the chat. All eager and ready to go. I love it. Eddie Casanova joins us, says hello. There's our friend Buster all the way from Glasgow. That's in Scotland. Oh, wait, I don't say it that way. Glasgow, Scotland. Buster says, good evening, Carey and Marlena and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland. The temperature in Edinburgh is 28 degrees Fahrenheit or 2.2 degrees Celsius. Right on. Thank you for the super chat, Buster, and the local weather report. It sounds like a good time to not be in Scotland. It sounds like it's really cold. I mean, it is December, though. So Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To joins us all the way from the UK as well. It's good to see you, Mike. And be sure and check out Mike's YouTube channel. He does similar videos to ours, a bit more polished. Ours are a bit more rough around the edges on purpose. Well, I don't know if his are more polished on purpose, so that's just the way he does it. But ours are definitely rough around the edges in order to underscore just how realistic, authentic, genuine, unscripted, and unrehearsed they really are for anybody who has doubts. If we could script this to be this bad, we would be, I'll tell you what, #1. But no, it's not that it's bad, it's just real. And a lot of people don't have patience for reality anymore. So we're fighting some people who insist that we make commercials. Mike has a nice balance between that, where he's getting to the point of it without necessarily turning it into an advertisement. And he's also very interactive with his audience, as we are. So if you've not seen Mike's channel, be sure and check it out. We'll also say hello to, let's see, Mark Gaines joining us from Northern Ireland, who's now a member for 31 months of the channel. He says, wow, 31 months. Hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Welcome in, Mark. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for your continued support, as always. Tony's RC saying hello, as well as Phil Stodd joining us. Dave Batt. Carmelo Catrino says hello. There's Gil Garcia and Anthony Pete. David Graham and John Williams all say hello. $10 from our good friend Charlie Purdy, who says happy holidays to all. Thank you, Charlie. It's Just Me says hello, and Mark Madman Dark Jedi says hello. We've got Richard DeFries and Kurt Schlegel joining us here in the chat room, as well as Old Man 55, Snakebite, and 55 Stang Dude say hello. Shamim Kajviras and Matt, along with Fred Sunderman and did I get everybody? I think I got everybody all saying hello. All right, so what are we doing today, right? That's what you want to know. Let's get to it. What's going on? Well, back at Studio B, one of the final projects we did over there was putting together a full-size ATX Project Zero build. Prior to that, we did a micro ATX Project Zero build that Luke Greenia, one of our members and longtime loyal community members, had purchased from us. And he loves it. He has it to this day and lets me know on a regular basis just how much he loves that machine, which is, you can never tell me that too many times. And that was a white build, a bit smaller, and I thought, let's do a full ATX build. And the only case I could find available at that time was the Sama case that MSI, who makes the Project Zero board, was promoting as a case you could use. Well, I'd never heard of Sama, but then I never heard of MSI's original case that we used for the micro ATX called Pano, P-A-N-O. And MSI was the manufacturer, Pano was the model. This was the manufacturer, was Sama, S-A-M-A. I never heard of them. But I figured with MSI's endorsement on it, should be fine, right? I mean, the whole idea behind moving the connectors to the back of the motherboard is for easier cable management. So you can imagine how upset I was and frustrated and disappointed when I found that this case does not allow for cables to be run in the back any more than any other case. So you've got this massive abundance of cables coming to the back, but look at the space they give you right here. It's nothing. Like if you look at any other back-mounted cable connections for motherboards, any other cases, none of them, and I mean none of them, are thin like this. This stands on its own as the single worst rear-mounted motherboard case you could possibly pick, and of course I picked it. Now look, you can see we've got it back together and it looks good. This is what I call a hot dog build. They look good, might even taste good, but you don't want to see how it's made. All right, so we've got two really bad cases now. This one and the Black Widow case. What I recommend you do is if you want to build a bargain basement PC, you want to go just the cheapest all the way around that you can possibly go, then either the Black Widow case or this Sama case will be ideal for that, but not for rear connector motherboards. If we were to take, let's say, the motherboard we took out of Mitch's computer and place that in here, just a regular everyday motherboard, then we have all this space in here to route our cables around, leaving minimal cables needed for the back. As long as we don't overdo any sort of RGB or liquid cooling, it should fit in there fine and it'll look good. But the reason I don't want to leave this the way it is, well, I'll just show you. Here's our box of parts. One of the last things I typically do is put the side panel on a computer. That's after all the cable management's done, the panels go back on, it gets cleaned up. Oftentimes I'll put a build date on the side, you know. Some cases don't have any screws that secure the front panels in. They might have magnets or clips, and that's usually fine, unless your cables are pushing outward, in which case you'll never get the back panel to fit because it's only connecting like a cabinet door, and it's preventing the cabinet door from closing all the way. There's no screws to sort of lock it down and keep it there. And that was my frustration. I must have worked with this for at least 45 minutes trying to figure out why it wouldn't close, because every time I would close this back panel, and as I recall, it just pops off. See, it's the cable management here is so bad. And I'm going to show you what the secret was for me to be able to close this. I mean, I struggled and struggled and struggled. I have built more computers than you can shake a stick at. And normally, if you have a panel that's tight, you just tighten the screws down, and maybe you get a little bowing in the middle from the cables pressing. But that's what happens when you try and put 10 pounds of junk in a 5-pound bag. With this case, you can see we didn't put that much in it. All we did is move all of our connectors to the back. But the power cable right here, this is our big 24, you see I've got a cable tie, a wire tie. You know I didn't put a nylon zip tie on this because it wasn't going to stay. I already knew that. I'm like, this is unacceptable. But you see this big 24-pin power cable? Do you see how far it sticks out? I'm talking up here. This is the plug. You cannot bend or twist the plug. It is absolutely that tall from the base of the motherboard to where the cables come out of it. And that interferes with putting this cover on. So without any screws or anything to secure this, when I try and lay this cover on here and snap it back into place, no matter what I do, it just pops right back off. See, there's the top, but no bottom. Hold on, maybe the bottom's got to go in first. Okay, so yeah, the bottom goes in first. And then you line it up. Real super easy here. Just putting a panel on, it's not rocket science. There's really nothing to guide you. There we go. That's finally in the track. Push that in, push that in. Push that in. Push that in. No, push that in. No, push. I cannot, it will not. No, this is insane. Why in the world would someone sell a case promoting rear connectors and then not give you enough room? So the secret, eventually, when I had to slow down and actually think about it, because I mean, I'm just putting a cover on. Why do I even need to think about it? You just put it on. It's like thinking about closing a suitcase. It's a brainless activity. You close the lid, you lock the latches, you move on with life. So after a while of just thinking I hadn't had it lined up right, it took me about 20 minutes to realize, this ain't you, Carey. So I'm looking and I realize this connector from the power cable is sticking out all the way to where my hand is. That's wider than the case is. Why didn't they make this case? Why is this case so deep from the front of the motherboard to the front of the glass? We have so much empty space in there, and then they gave us nothing in the back. You see this line right over here? That's how much space we have for all of the cables to run in the back. Are you out of your freaking mind? So everything gets jammed up behind this piece right here. You can shove all your cables behind this metal piece and it'll keep them from getting in the way of your panel closing. However, and there's, you know, decent room back there. I'd say nearly 2 inches of room right up against the back of your motherboard, which hopefully you don't eat through the wire insulation and make a short circuit. That's another story for another day. This is to hold your drives, optional drives. This could come out entirely, but it still doesn't help us because this physical connector does not move. I was looking for maybe some right angle adapters so that this could plug in sideways and then it would run along with the, oh no. No. And you think they'd include something? No. That's why I'm telling you, if we take a cheaper motherboard, a more budget-based board, and put it into this case, no one will know any better because everything will be on par with everything else. Junk with junk, cheap with cheap, and nice with nice. You don't see a Rolls Royce driving around with one miscolored fender on it. You just don't see that. So all I'm trying to say is, if you're going to buy a Sama case, consider it one of the cheapest cases you can buy, and you'll notice they're pretty aggressively priced, and one of the cases that, while promoting the rear connector boards, there are so many other options now for rear connector boards that this is the last thing in the world you should have to deal with. The whole point of the rear connector board is to give you room for those cables. I mean, a lot of room. If you look at any dual chamber case, those aquarium cases, they're no problem, super easy. And this is shocking, absolutely shocking that they would release something so poorly designed that even the power cable, you've got to have a power cable no matter what motherboard you put in. And if that power cable went in the front of the board, we'd have plenty of room. That's just stupid. So you'll never see another Sama case on this channel again. We are done. I'm so angry at how much time I had to put into this, and I'm not done. Now, all of these parts need to come out, okay? And I'm going to put them into a proper back-mounted cable-supported case. And furthermore, while this is an attractive case, I won't just dismiss it. We'll put some used parts in here, and then we'll sell it on the used market. I think Mitch's motherboard that we recently upgraded the other day, that'll look good in here. And now we're dealing more with adequate, we're evening the scales and the balance with the parts in the case. Cheap parts, cheap case, okay? Or older parts with a cheap case that has an older design, in the sense that any case that's sold today that has no consideration for cable management is at least 10 years old in the thought process of the engineers or the management of that company. Unacceptable. And a lot of cases that do that are older designs, like that Fractal Focus G that we struggled with, which was a very, very budget case. Like, it was basically made of thin tin, and we ended up returning it, and the power light didn't work. We had all kinds of problems. It's a $50 case. Well, if you buy a $50 case, expect that. And if that's good enough for you, all the power to you. But that's not what I was expecting when I bought this. And one of the reasons, and I'm going to tell you something as somebody who's been self-employed for a couple of decades, if you ever have an upset customer with you, it's your fault. Because it's your job as the person providing the service to let the customer know upfront what to expect. This is how long it should take, this is what it should cost, this is what I can do. And if the customer agrees to that, then and only then do you do the work. If you don't have that discussion with the customer, or if you fail to meet those expectations that you set with the customer, either way, that's on you. That's your fault. Sama's at fault here because they led me to believe that I had the ability to put my cables back here when they literally meant, no, it just has little holes in the back. So that's an option. It's not a good option, but you can do it. And boy, did they feed off of that. They made this thing out to be like, yeah, if you're going to buy one of those new MSI motherboards with the rear connectors, this is the case you want. No, it isn't. It absolutely is not the case I want. Might be the case you want. Remember, I'm going to have to get back into this at some point, right? Whether I use it myself or I sell it to a customer, I'm likely going to have to, well, just like with Mitch's system, we had to take it all back apart, put a brand new system in it 10 years later. You think I want to go through this ever, ever, ever again? Now listen, it's one thing if a customer reaches out to me and I've never met this customer before and they have this problem. That's not my fault and I'll bill them for my time. And if they agree with all that, I'll be happy to take on the work. But I'll be damned if I'm going to spend my hard-earned money and my time to try and build something that's supposed to be easier that is the exact opposite and ends up costing me more money and more time. That's why it's so frustrating to me. It's disrespectful to the customer to deceive them, as I believe Sama has done with this case. So as a regular case with a regular motherboard, it'll be fine, as long as we don't put liquid cooling and RGB on it. And even then, you know, we do have this area back here, which is decent for that kind of cable management. But this is unacceptable. There's absolutely nothing we can do about this, and this keeps the whole back cover from closing, and without any way to secure that back cover, that's problem number 2. It's one thing to not secure the front, because there's not usually stuff pressing against it. But for a rear cover that doesn't take any screws, that's highly unusual. And it's not like you're going to get this any different than any other power supply. That is standard. In fact, it's kind of shallow as far as power supply, power connectors go. So the only way you can get this case to fit is you have to severely bend this cable down, which is not good on the wires or connectors, and try and get it to go along the side of these fans here, right along the side, and then tie it down because it naturally doesn't want to stay that way. These are pretty inflexible cables. See what happens when I try and bend it? It wants to return back to the position it was in. I mean, is this a kludge? Are we just saying we'll make it fit? Or was it designed to fit? Even our USB 3.0 cable right here is right at the edge. It is severely bent over. I don't know how well you can see that. But because the rear connectors, they go straight in, that means your plugs, look how tall these plugs are. This isn't rocket science for the engineers that are designing these cases. Maybe they're not engineers. Maybe they have no proper academia education whatsoever. Maybe they're like, it's just a computer case. You don't need no education. Maybe that explains it all. Maybe it's let's get to market first so we can sell before all the other case manufacturers jump on board. We'll be the only choice. It's kind of how it was when I bought this, at least to the best of my knowledge. Cases with the rear connectors cut out in the cases are fairly more popular now, such as Johnsbow and Thermaltake and others that have, and NZXT and Lian Li, that have all jumped on board the rear connector train, which I'm glad to see. Had those cases existed back when I bought this one, I was not aware of it. So I'm going to stick with the fact that they hadn't come out yet, even though the truth is they might have and I just didn't know. I was going from MSI's recommendations based on the MSI board, and this was the only black ATX case at that time that I'm aware of that MSI recommended. So shame on MSI for even associating themselves with this. But let me tell you how I really feel. So today we're going to tear all this apart and we're going to move it into a more proper case. Later on, we'll put Mitch's old motherboard back in here as a regular standard everyday build, and everything will be happy again. I just wish I'd have known that before I bought it. These are lessons I like to share with you because when you're buying parts, this is stuff you need to think about. You're likely going to do your best to make something work, and if you made a bad or uninformed decision, you're more or less probably going to be stuck with it. The idea of putting all this back in the box it came in and taking it back to the UPS store to return it back to Amazon where we bought it or Newegg is a hassle. Most people won't do it. Most people will say, which thing is the one that'll get me to my end result faster? They're just anxious to get their computer running. And if it means they've got to work harder than they thought, they'll do that rather than return it. Because I know I'm going to have to work on this again in the future, I am going to be angry every single time I have to do that if I leave the rear connector board in it. If I put a regular board in it, it will bother me. Then it's just like any other case and we'll be fine. So food for thought when you're purchasing your case for your build. Are you the kind of person that'll send it back if you don't like it? Or are you the kind of impatient, anxious person that will just make it work and struggle through it? Because it'll never be over for you. The next time you go to upgrade or work on that case, any single time you will be revisiting this nightmare over and over until you finally one day have had enough. And maybe you're upgrading your system after 6 or 7 or 8 years, and it's a perfect opportunity for you to buy another case. Why not just not go down that road and have a much better computing experience, especially as a hobbyist, perhaps with a limited budget, to not just buy the cheapest thing around, or if you do, expect it to always be a thorn in your side. Even when it's good, it's never done, because you're still going to have to, you will still upgrade it, you will still need to get in there for one reason or another, and this is going to make it frustrating, and it's going to make it more time consuming and more difficult than it needs to be if you use a rear mounted cable motherboard. So anyway, that's all of my justification at play there and why we're doing what we're doing today. I can have Mara put a link to this build video in our video notes, and then that will have all of the part listings in there for this build, which is our Z790 Project Zero. Now let's see what folks are saying in the chat here. A shout out to our friend Paul Gray in Australia, who before the show sent us a very generous Amazon gift card. Thank you, Paul, as always. Cheers, mate. Is that what they say? Down there in Australia. Fred Sunderman joining us says hello. LRCX says hello. Tusky Nashville says hello. Paul Howe joins us in the chat room along with Avery Ramsdorf. Rick Lakes joining us from Minnesota. Icarana says hello. Icarana says there are cases from 15 years ago that have more space behind the motherboard than this one does. You wouldn't know that from the way they sell it, the way it's marketed. Jim KJ3N said Project Zero is probably better suited to dual chamber build. Absolutely, for sure. Mike Quinton with a $10 super chat said, did a BIOS update? Oh, I guess he's saying he did a BIOS update. See, did a starts with a question, but I think he meant I did a, which is a statement. So let me try and read the comment here in the right tone of voice. I did a BIOS update with a cheap USB 2.0 drive and it flickered out. After panicking, recovery switched to a slightly more expensive NVMe brand USB flash drive and sailed on smoothly. Brand names matter. I don't necessarily agree with that. These days, a lot of the brand names in the no-name brands use the exact same parts. Exactly. Same controller, same chips. The question is, which of the no-name brands are crap and which of the no-name brands are on board with the name brands? So I've been using Sam Data, And those SAM data drives have been 100% just as good as a SanDisk or a Samsung or any of the name brand. And as far as I can tell, they use all the same parts. So if you'd have been watching my channel, you would have never even used those, and you would have already known this, and you could have saved yourself the time and the hassle. However, I understand and appreciate those of us who want our own experiences and want to decide for yourselves through your own experience if it actually matters. But we've already done this research for you. We've already found cheap, no-name brand flash drives that are 100% compatible with every board we've ever used them on, and haven't seen one fail yet with regards to BIOS updates and even boot disks. So I appreciate the update. That's why we're here, is to make sure that we share this information so people don't have to repeat all the same things we've already learned and shared. But I do appreciate your feedback, and thank you so much for your Super Chat contribution, and that's again from Mike Quinton. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says a braided 24-pin power cable are a real pain in the butt. They're way too chunky and hard to manage in most cases, let alone a BFF or Project Zero, or BTF, Back to the Future. Okay, but here's the problem, Mike, and I understand and I agree with what you're saying, but the end of the cable's still going to be the same. No matter how this part of the cable is, whether it's braided or whether the cables are strand. I've seen cables where there's 4 separate strands. That would be even worse in here, like from Silverstone. I've seen well, this is modular cables. I've seen, wait, is this modular? I don't even know. I've seen some modular cables. One of the things that I'm combining different thoughts. I've seen modular cables that are just as inflexible. You don't normally see flexible power supply cables because of how thick they are. That being said, there may be some out there, but I can't name any. You might be able to. I can't name one off the top of my head. A right angle adapter would solve the problem, but as far as I know, they don't exist. And you know, you're always going to have this end. There's absolutely nothing you can do about the height of that. That is, this clip has to seat down, and then something has to hold these fairly thick cables, you know, compared to like a fan cable or a 5-volt cable. These cables have a thicker gauge, and so as such, they're less flexible. And you still have this amount of height to deal with, universally guaranteed no matter what. You should not have to bend and twist and Cirque du Soleil the cable to get the back panel on to a case that says it's designed for rear connector boards, when clearly it has taken no cables into consideration. On the one hand, the people who promoted this case are right. The rear connector board fits in there fine. It's the cables that don't fit. It's like they didn't lie, but they also omitted some pretty critical information, whether that's out of ignorance because they didn't bother actually trying it. They never built one, right? They sold the case to you. They designed it and sold it, and they never actually built anything in it, at least not with rear connectors. Because if they had, they'd realize where the error in their design was, regardless of which power supply they used. Or they never built a computer before and thought playing Cirque du Soleil with the cables was normal, in which case, what business do they have selling a computer case? Then here's the thing about the world we live in today. You can design your own computer case. You can open Microsoft Paint and draw it out, and then find a manufacturer, typically in China, to make that case for you. And you could then put it on Amazon and Newegg, and you could start selling that case without any degree, without any formal education about airflow or fitment, and you never even have to build in the case you sell. You can make it out of the cheapest materials possible and just start profiting, and there's almost no downside to it. There's no electronics in the case itself. The customer adds that, so you don't need any UL qualification. It doesn't need to surpass or be certified by anybody at any point of the government or any of the government regulatory agencies, because it's a metal box with glass. That's it. That's all there is. There's no barrier to entry to just designing one yourself, finding some bulk manufacturer to make it for you, and then selling it to suckers online. Guess who I am? A sucker online. This goes to show you, you don't have to know what you're doing to sell products to consumers. If you just put out a good marketing campaign, be sure and tell them all the good, leave out the bad, and you're not lying. You delivered the goods. It's not deception. It's not false advertising. I got exactly what they said I would get. Technically, There was no mention about the rear cables. It was all about the motherboard being able to fit with the rear connectors, and that does work. If we took all the power supply and cables out of it, it'd be beautiful. Not sure how you use it, but yeah, I mean, technically, yeah, they didn't lie. You shouldn't have to buy special parts to accommodate a case. If a case requires special parts, the case should come with those parts. I'm fired up today. Mara says links to the Project Zero builds have been added in the video notes below this video. Thank you, Mara. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says, I sat here building up a test bench system to verify my 14700K is a bad one and needs an RMA. That's pretty unusual to get a bad Intel CPU. It happens, but boy, you should buy a lottery ticket. But what I want to do today is prove to you I'm not just an old man complaining for what others might consider to be a no big deal situation. It's actually quite a deal. And when I tell you you should not have to accommodate your case should accommodate you, I want to put those words into action today. Because as we take this out and put it into a different case, and it's another case I've never worked on before, but the odds of another manufacturer selling this to me, this is like a one. Luckily there aren't too many like this. This is the only one I've ever seen that's a rear connector that does not allow for the cables to be connected in the rear without some extreme contortions. We've got a Thermaltake case, and we're going to use that Thermaltake case, which I believe has the rear connectors for the board, and if so, you're going to see that goes in so much better. This is not a dual chambered case, and it should fit in no problem, like a glove, the way this should have gone to begin with. So I'm going to either prove myself or eat my words. Are you ready? Let's take it apart. So the glass panel on the front comes off the same as the rear. There's an indent, you push it away, and it just pops off. Without any screws to secure this, moving this around as heavy as it is, if that's not 100% secure, it's going to fall and hit the floor. I mean, it's tempered glass. It's just going to shatter into a lot of pieces. It's safety glass. But nonetheless, where are you going to find another piece of glass to replace it? So I don't like the lack of security. There's not even hinges. Like if it hung on hinges that could hold the glass, then we'd only have to worry about the door opening during movement. But here we've got to worry about it falling out. And when that falls out and then the back falls out, it's easy to misstep, and then you just fall and hit the ground and go head first into your computer, which is probably going to leave an injury. This is not a joke. This is big and it's heavy, and it's designed supposedly to be an advanced design, which is not, in my opinion. This is going backwards. This is the wrong way. Thankfully, we can take it apart a lot easier than it went together. All I have to do is look at this nest of cables here. This little panel comes off. And watch how fast. Now, wouldn't it be great if it went together this easily? Look at how much it's bowing. But thankfully, it did have a screw the way the panel should have had. Because otherwise, if it was clipped in, there's no way that would stick. And there's not that many cables down there. Now, granted, I haven't done any cable management. But the problem is, this case comes with these fans. These 3 fans and this one in the back. And they're all hooked to this fan controller. So before you criticize me for my poor cable management, this is how they sent it. All of these came with the case. It's your job to figure out how to make it fit. They had a hard time putting this on with an empty case. This is how it was sent to me. Go back and look at the original video. It's crazy. Absolutely 100% crazy that was good enough. That this company said, we'll put our name on that. We'll base our reputation on this product. Well, if that's good enough for this company, then this product is not good enough for me or any of my customers. Unacceptable. If I bought this at a garage sale and somebody's like, yeah, I made that myself in the garage, I'm a hobbyist and I'm a metal worker, I'd say, for a guy working out of his garage, that's pretty promising. It needs some improvement. But from a professional manufacturer to release this and sell it at places like Newegg and Amazon, well, that just goes to show you can sell anything. You can make anything, and people will buy it. I did. All right, here's our USB 3.1 cable. Look how bent over that is. I'm telling you, that is not good for the connector. If you want to ruin your cables, if you want to reduce the lifespan, then yeah, start bending and contorting them in ways. This is a ribbon cable. This came with the case. And I'm telling you, it's not even designed to be, it doesn't even have a right angle on it or anything to make the cable management any easier. It just gets worse and worse the more we look at it. Look at all this. This is all fans. Fans, fans, fans. This is a power connector coming from the power supply to the fan controller. This is our front port audio, which again came with the case. Just sloppy, careless, thoughtless, selfish, money-grabbing greed is the way I would describe Sama for releasing a case like this to the public as a rear connector board. It absolutely is one of the sloppiest, worst cases I have ever had the displeasure of having on my counter. Now again, if a customer bought this and the customer said, hey, I'm in this situation, can you help me? Of course I'm going to help them. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you need to get rid of the case. You made a bad decision here. Or we're going to get rid of the back connector board, which is going to be a lot more money. So the cheap solution is let's just get everything rebuilt into a proper case. And from that point forward, either the customer can work on it themselves easier, or they can bring it back to me in the future and I can work on it faster and easier. That means the customer is without the machine for a less period of time because I can get the job done faster. It also means if I can get the job done faster, the customer doesn't pay as much in labor cost. So whatever the cost of the replacement case is, will pay for itself over time. If the customer should want to, like the case and they want to upgrade like we did for Mitch, doing it in this would be very, very difficult if it was a rear connector board. So with all that out of my system, let's just take everything out of here because I am fired up and I don't feel like these parts deserve this prison they're in. These are good, honest, hardworking, innocent victims. Like this power supply never did nothing wrong to deserve this kind of imprisonment. This confinement is unacceptable. This is an EVGA 750 watt, not a modular power supply. That certainly didn't help things, but I will tell you on a rear connector case, you shouldn't have to use a modular power supply. Modular power supplies are really for people where you're trying to hide your cables by removing any you don't need. But if everything's behind the motherboard, who cares one way or the other? No one's going to see it. And then, of course, you don't have to worry about losing the cables later on, or perhaps even buying the wrong cables and then smoking your motherboard or whatever hey, it fits, it's the right cable. Power supplies don't work that way. So if you have a modular power supply, I hope you never misplace your cables, and if you do, I hope you buy the right cables to replace them with, or you're going to find out in a very expensive, painful way that lesson. And I'd rather your experience was a positive one and not one of wasted money and smoke. But, I can hope all day, right? Now, with all of that removed, these are the cables. These are your basic cables you're going to have coming from just this case. USB 3.1, 3.0, and front port audio. All of these, again, fan, power, RGB. Do you understand? This is all the case. This sloppy, nasty mess is what you're buying. When you unbox this case brand new, this is what you already get before you've even begun. Good luck with this. I'm so worked up over this. I feel like somebody sold me, it's like you're walking through a park and there's some, like they do this in Vegas, they'll do it in Paris. They'll have the hidden, you know, the cups game where they move the cups around, or there's cards, and they're scam artists. All they're doing, there'll be somebody in the audience, you know, who says, oh, I'll play the cups game, and then they'll win. And then a crowd builds up, and they don't realize that person's a plant. They're there to encourage other people to see they can win too, and then they play the cups game and they lose. And they're like, do it again, do it again. And then after you've lost about $50, you're like, okay, enough of that. And they do this all day, and they earn thousands of dollars a day from unsuspecting tourists coming through and being gouged and scammed in a game you can never win, and it's unfair, and it's illegal. But oftentimes in places like Vegas and Paris, among many others, law enforcement is not really doing a very good job enforcing it. So it's on you to protect yourself. So I'd like for you to protect yourself against this case, because everything I already said. Now, all the screws we're removing from the case we need to keep with the case, because if we want to put, let's say, Mitch's old motherboard in here, we'll use these screws to secure it. Not all screws are the same from one case to another. Now, we have a great motherboard, great RAM, great storage, great performance, great power supply, and we ruined it all. We ruined all of it with this case. Now, when I first put it up here on the counter, you probably thought, yeah, I don't see what the problem is. When we opened it up, I bet you're on board with me now, aren't you? So every time I walk by this case, it burns my butt. I'm just like, I am so sick of looking at this. And part of the reason I'm so upset is this was intended to be beautiful. This whole thing, right up into the case, had everything to be both stylish, powerful, reliable, and easy to work on. And we just, that one last bit, that easy to work on part, results in just starting over again, at least, you know, beyond the motherboard prep, which remains. Meaning all that time and effort I spent was all for nothing, not to mention what it cost me. So I'm here to share these experiences with you in the hopes that you can avoid making these mistakes. I hope the mistakes you make are different than the mistakes I make. All right, look at the difference. I want you to think about this for a minute. This motherboard, this has our CPU, RAM, storage. This does all the computations with the sound card, a network card, Wi-Fi card, and there's only 2 wires that come out of it. Look how clean. Look how MSI has protected the board and given it this aesthetic. It's nice. Now, you may not care about that, but then why would you buy a case with a window? And if you're going to buy the case with the window and you want to hide the cables, it's for the look of it. So then why would you do this? All right. So the only way I can really safely put this back panel back on is to literally put the cables to the front of the case. There, once the cables are moved to the front, both the front and back, because look at all the room we've got in here. Like, there's so much room for cables in here, but defeating the whole point of having a glass case or a glass panel. And that snaps on effortlessly, but it also pops off effortlessly. It's not in there really, really super tight. It relatively, you know, pretty easily comes out of there. I want to put this piece back for right now, because I don't want to lose this piece or the little screw that holds it in, because there's only one screw like that, which, here it is. This case manufacturer, man, I'll tell you what. Happy holidays, huh? Merry Christmas. I got you a problem. Thanks. Didn't have enough of those already. I'm a collector. So this lines up with the fans. That's how it's supposed to go together when it has parts in it. Just so we're clear. All right. Later, in another video, coming up at some point when I'm ready, we'll put a regular motherboard in this, and it'll be fine with that. Expectations change. I'm not a big fan of having all my connectors down here at the bottom, but that can be moved. They have it so that you can move them up to the top here. There's a cutout. Not a fan of them up there either. I mean, they're okay. They're okay up here. The problem is if we put a liquid cooler up here and you put anything like, I like to put the motherboard box up on top, you know, and then I inadvertently suffocate my cooler because it can't breathe air. So having a flat top that encourages you to put stuff on top of it because you've got your USB ports up there, if we moved them, can result in blocking unintentionally your airflow if you have a radiator up here. So just FYI, it's something to keep in mind when you're purchasing a case. All right, let me get this, let's get this out of here. Now, what case are we going to use today? That's the big question. What is the solution? Well, we're going to do something that got us in this position to begin with. And that is we're going to use a case we've never ever used before that claims to be, I believe it claims to be compatible with rear connector boards. I think it does. Let's just find out together if I've misunderstood, if we're right back to square one. I've also wanted this color, and it's always been sold out. And it's what we call Bumblebee. Now, I think our friend Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-Tos knows exactly what this is. And it comes with two different panels. You can do a metal mesh panel or the glass that comes with the case, right? Anything the case requires special should come with the case. That adds to the landfill because, quite frankly, I'm going to leave it glass. I don't have the intention of putting the metal mesh on. And then it comes with an extra panel here with a hole in it that fits a 2.1-inch LCD screen for data and information that you can control like a little monitor, which are damn near impossible to find. But I did find it out of Amazon Japan, and we should have it in 2 weeks. $86 for a $90 case, okay? $86 for the screen, and like 90 bucks or 100 bucks for the case. That's how preposterous these aesthetics are costing the enthusiasts who are spending good money for lights and blinky, shiny things. And guilty as charged, because that's a really good value for the case and a terrible value for that little LCD. But it's so unique and it's so different. So you're going to get two panels. One's going to go in the trash probably, or you're going to put it in the garage somewhere for the next 15 years until you throw it in. One way or another, it's going in the trash. But the idea that you've got all these customizations is kind of cool, but it is adding to the cost of the case, right? If we could just buy the case without that option and just glass or just mesh, the case price would come down, the landfills wouldn't get as full. But this is the world we live in right now. It's kind of crazy. People think this is yellow. This, yeah, it's a Bumblebee, sure. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says, LOL, that's the same one as I'm building right this very minute, but it's the black version and I'm using the glass front. Oh, I think the glass front looks so much better. We got two RGB fans that are included in the price, and then your rear fan is also included that's not RGB, because why would you light up the back that's up against the wall? You know what I mean? So I'm all for it. Now, in theory, this should be back motherboard compatible. Let's see. Look, we have screws that hold the back panel on. What a novel idea. So it doesn't just pop off? Mind-blowing. So does it pull backwards? We got a handle. The screws remain captive, so they don't come out, which is good. You don't have to worry about dropping them or losing them. Oh, there's a third screw. I saw this line right here, and I thought, I thought the panel was this big, but no, that threw me because normally you wouldn't have another screw here unless this was a separate panel that came off. But no, that's all one piece. Hey, look, 3 screws, it's even more secure. Give me 6, I won't complain. Give me 0, you saw what happened. All right. So this should slide back about, I don't know, it's about 1/2 inch. And then it just pops off pretty much like any other case ever made in the history of computer cases, or at least ATX style cases. Now looking in the back, I'm looking for the cutouts around this area here. What's this for? Cable management? Huh, it's almost as though they thought you might want to hook some cables up back here. Who'd thunk it? All right, let's take the front off as well so we don't damage anything. Now the front has 4 screws because the panel down here does come off separately. You can see the seam where the glass is, so these 2 hold the glass on. I've never worked on this before. I've not watched any how-to videos on this. I'm just looking at it, critical thinking, how does this come apart? And sure enough, that's exactly what it does. It shouldn't be rocket science. A lot of this stuff is pretty obvious if you just take a minute and study it. Then you've got this piece down here, right? Once again, all the screws are captive. That's a welcome thing. And look how tiny that is. That's because this piece individually comes off, and we can replace that once we get our 2.1-inch screen. It just plugs into a USB header on the board, I think. And then we load some software from Thermaltake, and now we've got a little round screen. And the idea is that you put the little round screen that matches with Thermaltake's cooler, just like it shows in their marketing photos. And now we've got the opposite of a hot dog build. Now we've got a quality build that not only looks sharp, but it runs fast, and it's easy to work on and upgrade in the future. Is that so bad? Was that so hard? It's simple stuff. And that's what makes it so unforgivable. It was all, you're not reinventing a wheel here. Just look at what your competitors are doing and either do the same or improve upon it or get out of the business. One way or another, you're probably going to end up out of business anyway, because when word gets out, and it will get out in the community, people are going to be telling others, don't buy that product. Now here on top, we've got a dust filter. So if you do put a radiator up here and it's blowing air out, do not put this back on. We do not filter exhaust air. We only filter air that's being drawn in. On the other hand, if your fans are sucking air in, you definitely want this on. Or if you're not putting a radiator up here at all, and you just want that for looks, you know, you can do that too. But you will be suffocating slightly your machine by filtering the air that's trying to exhaust out. So it's not an optimal, efficient way to build a computer. It likely won't cause any problems. It would just be better, run cooler, and breathe easier. If you go to a higher elevation and it's hard for you to breathe, it may not kill you. It might be uncomfortable and inefficient for you. You might have to catch your breath a lot. That's fine, if you're okay with it. In much the same way, that's what's happening when you exhaust, when you filter exhaust air. All right, let me come back over to this screen here. Everything got backed up on my chat room. Okay, so this box is going to have everything we need for screws and mounting any of the hardware. I want to take the small motherboard screws here that came out of the Sama case. These need to go with, the screws stay with the case, remember that. Even the spare screws you're not using, you might want to use them in the future. If I were you, I would put those away. They might be very difficult to try and find replacements for. You know, and let's take Mitch's build. Mitch hadn't touched that thing, upgraded it, or been in it for 6 years. Now, does Mitch still have the motherboard box that I gave him? He didn't bring it over. He probably says he has it, but does he? Does he know where it is? Because he's now got all the spare screws to that like the documentation, the spare screws that go to his case should also be in that motherboard box, but he doesn't have that motherboard anymore. I personally don't care. I don't want it back. But when you're planning to do your own replacement, I hope you have all of that equipment put away so that years later you won't run into these obstacles that may prevent you from getting your build done in an efficient amount of time, in a regular amount of time. Now, normally when manufacturers include these boxes, they use a wire tie, a twisty tie. But here they've used a nylon zip tie that has to be cut off. And I always use wire cutters. I see people use scissors to do that. It just makes me cringe. These wire cutters are cheap, they're angled. It's so much easier to do this with the proper tools. But, you do it however you want. With that removed, we've now got all those screws I was talking about. We're going to keep these in the motherboard box. This motherboard box is going to have all the extra screws that came with that Sama case, and I'm going to separate them out because I don't want to confuse the Sama case screws with these screws. So it does take a little bit of organization if you're building a lot of computers to understand what goes where, because we have cases from Corsair, we have cases from Thermaltake, we have cases from NZXT and Lee, and rarely do they share the same screws 100%. Usually there's something different. It could be the way the hard drives mount. They may have special shoulder screws with grommets, or it could be that they have some case screws that are different than everybody else's. And if you use anything else, you're going to strip out the case, and there's no repairing that. Which is fine, if you don't care, we don't care, but we certainly wouldn't sell it to a customer that way. Now, in this baggie, we've got a little PC speaker that can go on the motherboard if you want to go back to 1986 and have your computer beep every time you turn it on. Play a little Oregon Trail. Jam out to your little on-off speaker. 4-channel. Yeah, 4-channel speaker. And then we've got some nylon zip ties included and case screws, and it looks like a fan extension, which is good. Glad to see that. This little bag of screws here, before I get myself confused, I'm going to write Sama on the bag. Because I'm going to, at some point, maybe tomorrow, maybe 3 weeks from now, go back to that Sama case with as I mentioned, with Mitch's old board. So let me put this bag, where did I put the case? I want to keep the bag and the case together. Oh, it's over here. Okay. And again, I'm going to go through the motherboard box. Anything that came with that case is in the motherboard box is going to go back to the case for whoever, whatever happens with that. There's no reason to confuse myself when I have to work on this in the future to why I have 2 sets of screws. It's way too many screws. It wouldn't make any sense. Anything slows me down, I have to figure it out because it's not obvious, means I was sloppy in my work. Or it's bad design on the manufacturer's part. All right, we've got 9 pre-installed standoffs here. And that's pretty much the standard that an ATX motherboard will require is 9. 1, 2, 3 across the top. 1, 2, 3 across the middle. 1, 2, 3 across the bottom. Some motherboards will add an additional screw right around here. Just watch for that. You don't have to use it, by the way. But again, as a professional, if you buy a Dell or an HP, you won't find that screws are missing because they decided, we don't need that. And we want to operate at that professional level, not at the amateur level. Now I'm going to set this in here. I'm going to do what we call a dry fit. I want to make sure that everything's going to be fitting in here without any obstruction. And when it comes to Thermaltake, I think they're one of the case manufacturers that give you a really good value for the money. Whether you've seen the helicopter builds we've done, or you've seen, there's another Thermaltake, what was it? We've done a few here. And for the money, you get a lot of case for the money with Thermaltake, usually. I've been very happy with the quality, the thickness of the metal. Where Thermaltake has let me down is sometimes they don't allow for, like on the Apache helicopter, the fan on the power supply had to be reversed because there was no airflow for the power supply underneath it like it normally is. This one from Thermaltake allows for the fan to be on the bottom as it should be. The reason I don't like to turn the fan upwards is if you drop a screw or something while you're working on the machine, it can go right into your power supply, and you're going to get a big bang if it's plugged in. It's dangerous. The Apache helicopter or any open frame case usually has very little to do with any cable management consideration. So Thermaltake's not alone in that. The cable management on the Apache helicopter was quite challenging. I'll also say on the big beast build that we did with, that is now owned by Doug Betts, Live Windows Training with Doug Betts uses that big beast build. That was one of the most difficult cable managements I've ever done. But it's got 2 motherboards in it with 2 of everything, 2 power supplies, 2 of everything, and then 10 fans in the front that are all RGB. That's 20 wires just on the front. That has nothing to do with, you know, a machine working. That's just for looks. So that took several hours to get that all cable managed, and probably a good solid bag of zip ties I went through. Probably over 100 zip ties. But, you know, $10,000 build, everything's a bit excessive. Now, the board looks like it's going to fit in here just fine. I think the color's going to be fine. But I think I'll take that cooler off and we'll use a Thermaltake cooler that will match the screen. Yeah, I think that'll be even better than this. So if we can make it even better, that's even better. Rather than saying, well, I'll just suffer. It's good enough. You know, if I left it in the other case, it'll work. I'll just always be unhappy every time I look at it. It'll remind me of what a sucker I am. Just keep reminding me of my bad decisions. Okay, so here's all the spare parts they give you. We've got a little socket for the 5mm motherboard standoffs. They give you extras. That's nice. They give you an extra thumb screw in case you lose one. That's good. You've got some fan screws. That's good. Looks like they're... Oh, we got another extra thumb screw. Looks like they give you way more than you'll need with an opportunity to even lose a little bit. It's 3 motherboard standoffs in there. Remember, we've opened some cases where there was 1. Like, what the heck? And those are usually no-name brand, just junky cases that people go, wow, that's so cheap, you know, I'll buy it. And if you're going to do that, be prepared for why, finding out exactly why now. Oh, that's why it was so cheap. Now I understand. Now, I don't know which of these screws is for the motherboard standoffs. It's either the fine thread or the coarse thread. I want it to be the coarse thread. Nope. And so there's more of the fine threaded than anything else. Looks like it's the fine thread after all. Okay, good enough. It'll work. Got my wire tie attached to the magnet there. All right, let's get this secured to the case, and then I can put it back on its feet so you can see what that looks like. I think you can all agree, this definitely looks more expensive and fancier than the other case did. In my opinion, anyway. And you know what? It's because it is fancier and more expensive. So it is really a matter of getting what you pay for. This industry is famous for that. People think they're getting a deal. Look at the deal I found. And then they find out afterwards, oh, all right, well, It's not as good as what I saw the guy on camera doing on YouTube, but I can make it work, and it's not that big of a deal. And you know, if you got nothing else to do all day and that's fun for you, enjoy your purchase. But for me, to have to support it, and as an example of the quality of my work, I don't want to put my name behind that. I really don't. I run with very specific standards. And if it doesn't meet my standards, it's not good enough. And in my business, in any business, customers are judging you. That's why sites like Google Reviews and Yelp exist. You're being judged. You're looking for approval. And through that approval is how you're going to get word of mouth to either have people recommend you or warn against you. And there's not much you can do about it. If somebody writes something very negative about you, any response you give is likely fuel for the fire. You're best just ignoring it and do better with future customers and have that negative review scroll all the way to page 2. Very few people ever go to page 2, and that will more quickly get it out of your mind and out of your life and learn a lesson from it so you don't repeat the same mistake. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like now. Now keep in mind, you probably won't be able to see that motherboard. Oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, we will. I was going to say, I thought this was smoked glass, but it isn't. It's pretty clear. Let's see what that's going to... Remember, with all our cables running to the back, it should pretty much look very close when it's done to how it looks now. It's not bad. I think a black motherboard overall would look better, but a little contrast in there probably won't hurt. But I'm thinking if we put the liquid cooler in it, we can elevate this to another level aesthetically. We're not overclocking it. The air cooler we've got in it will probably last the entire life of the system, whereas a liquid cooler will likely fail at some point. So there is a balance between aesthetic, performance, and service. The cooler we've got on there is cheaper. It's all that's needed to cool our system. We don't need anything more than that, technically. And well, it's visually appealing. I think the Thermaltake cooler is going to be even more so, which costs more money and won't last as long, probably. It will cool better, but that won't make any difference since we're not having cooling problems. It'll still run the same at 80 degrees that it runs at 30 degrees. So there's no benefit there unless we're overclocking. So back over here behind the camera, somewhere, I think I have a Thermaltake cooler, or did it not arrive yet? We've had a lot of parts coming in during this time of year, and I can't remember what has arrived and what we're still waiting on. Darn it. I don't think it's arrived yet. I think it's coming in tomorrow. But I'll show you on Amazon which cooler we've ordered. It's just a standard Thermaltake cooler as demonstrated in the marketing photos for this case. For some reason, I thought I already had it. But now that I think about it, I don't remember unboxing it. So let me check my phone real quick and find out where we're at on the order status. We have over 30 computer builds here, and it's very easy to lose track of what goes with what. That's why I'm talking about separating the screws out of the box, keeping the box with the case. If I do everything properly, I know exactly where everything for each build is. And if you do the same at home, even if you only have 1 or 2 computers, it will benefit you as well. Ask me how I know. So let's take a look here. Let me pull up my Amazon history. And then I'll look at what's coming. My orders. What is coming? So we're not expecting to get that 2.1 inch LCD until the 20th of this month, which is going to be coming up quickly here. And as far as the cooler goes, it looks like, so this is the Thermaltake Ceres 350. Ceres is C-E-R-E-S, or Ceres. And I ordered that, when did I place? Because this came pretty quickly. That was back around November 30th. Oh no, November 30th is when I received it. And then I think the cooler, the liquid cooler, was ordered after that. Yeah, it says it doesn't expect it here until December 13th, so 3 more days. Okay, it's been delayed. It should have been here by now. It's the Thermaltake TH240 V2 Ultra EX ARGB AIO CPU cooler EFG. Now I know my ABCs. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Okay, so $120 for that cooler. We obviously won't get to that today because we don't have it. But I'll show you here on the screen. Let me pull up my Amazon page here. I'll show you what we're doing. Or at least what we're trying to accomplish with today's build. Apparently Mike and I have the same motivation, and just prior to no prior discussion, we've decided to more or less build the same thing, but probably for different reasons. I just wanted this yellow bumblebee color. Okay, so the Thermaltake Ceres 350. Let's start with the case because I want you to see the photos. Now there is a 300 series. The 350 is a newer, improved version, is my understanding. And let me bring over my window capture so I can show you what I'm looking at on my Amazon results, because there's a lot of different colors. It's the same case in multiple colors. Let's go to window capture and we'll change it to our browser. Here it is. So these are all the Ceres 350 MX, same model, just different colors. Black. This is appears to be a white or an off-white. We've got a hydrangea blue. We've got a matcha green, even though that doesn't look very green to me. The one below it is also green, but it's like British racing green. And then we're back to this matcha green on the 300 versus the 350. Mike, over at Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, might be able to tell us the difference between these two. It's my understanding this is the older one, and you can tell by the price, $99 versus $120. They look pretty similar. And if we just use the green one, for example, I imagine the same marketing photos are going to be used. Now, why in the world somebody put an RGB fan at the bottom where you'll never see it is a bit mind-baffling. Okay, but take a look at the cooler here. You see how the cooler has like a round wrist dial, like a wristwatch dial around it? And you notice the 2.1 matches that? That's the look I'm going for. And we will get that with that cooler. It's a 240 millimeter cooler, and the model of cooler that they're demonstrating here, I would think they'd put it in the video description to help sell them together, because that's going to match the screen down below. And it ties in all this aesthetic, but it's also adding $200 onto the price of the computer. Just bear in mind, we could have this computer up and running right now. We don't need that cooler and we don't need that screen. Purchasing those two items is slightly over $200 after sales tax. So we're doing that specifically for the look. There's no fee added for the different colors. So in other words, if you want this in black or, you know, light green, dark green, blue, they're all the same price. And we've got Bumblebee Yellow, which, as you can see, is a very difficult color to get. It looks like it's already sold out again. So here's the screen. They want $90 for this. And this ships from, where's the shipping from? Imports from Japan. So you can't even get this in the US right now. When you order this, you're going to get an email that says, you know, it's going to take 3 weeks. It's like, well, wait a minute, why is it taking so long? And if you look at the details, because it's coming from Japan. Well, you know what? I don't care where it comes from, because when you go to Thermaltake's website, it says it's not available in the US yet, and they don't have an expected delivery day. I don't want to wait indefinitely, so if I've got to wait a little longer with a deadline, in other words, we know that's going to arrive by December 20th, maybe it costs us a few dollars more than if we buy it from Thermaltake directly, which we cannot do right now because it's not being sold here yet. I don't know what the details are, but I think Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To first talked about this in October and mentioned the screen was coming out. Well, that's 3 months ago. Where's the screen? Anyway, we should have a little box that came with the case that will have the panel with the hole in it. And I should probably check and verify that. But the cooler, I mentioned the cooler because the cooler is a Thermaltake, what did I say it was? It's a 240 AIO. It's got a round LCD. I don't know, that should be enough to find it. Yeah, that's it. 120 bucks for the cooler. As far as I know, they don't make a 360 of this. I'm not sure. I don't even think this case would hold a 360, but again, I'm not sure. This is what's shown in the photos, the marketing photos with this case, so that's what I'm trying to emulate. I'm using that as my benchmark. All right, so we're going to add that. And, you know, none of this is possible without our members. Yeah, I'm going to harp on about that again because Thermaltake has not sent us anything for review. Ever, never in the history. I am jealous that Mike's Unboxing Review and How-To not only gets product from Thermaltake for review, but then gets an award from Thermaltake. And I'm like, hey, I think Thermaltake has a different marketing division in the UK that appears to be far better than the marketing division that seems non-existent for us in the US. I'm glad to see Thermaltake reaching out to the creator community in England. I wish they did that for us in the United States. But regardless, with your support, we just buy what we want and we'll put it together and we don't have to rely on any company's cooperation and we can go buy ourselves an award. All right. Congratulations to Mike, by the way. Well earned. Let me go back over to my chat room. Did I scare him away? Mike says Thermaltake's UK rep is a total gem, very helpful and genuine. Well, tell him to get his butt over here to USA or do some training over here because we sure would love to work with them. We're limited with how much we can work with them because of our budget. If we have unlimited budget where they're going to send us product, hey, I like their products. There's a lot of companies that I like. And those are the products that I'm going to sell to my customers. The products you see me complain about here, you likely will never see those products again. And they will never be sold to a customer. They might be sold to, they might be given away to a friend, or they might be sold like anonymously on Facebook or OfferUp or, I don't know, locally. I'm not going to pay to ship it because that's just stupid. And they won't even remember me. It'll be I'll meet you at a parking lot, bring cash. It'll look like a drug deal. Here, take it, buy. They don't have any way to really reach out to me other than however they reached out to me to begin with, right? If it's Craigslist or OfferUp. I hate selling that way. It's sketchy. It's not the way I conduct business, but I make sure these people have no idea who I am or that I run a business. I'm just Joe Schmo selling a computer, nobody special. Here's a good deal, get rid of it. I never want to see it again. I'm going to take that money, whatever it is I can get for it, I'll take, and I'll put it back into the channel so I can buy other stuff for more content. So between that and with your help and your support, we're able to continue to do these kind of builds, and we're able to speak freely. You know, I don't have to worry about any lashback from Sama. You know what I'm saying? Like, we bought that, and we got taken as far as I'm concerned. And if Sama don't like it, good, then we're even. Now over here, I have a box that came with the case. And this should have within it 2 extra panels. The glass comes off and can be replaced with a mesh panel that should match the color. And then there should also be this little panel down here that matches color, that has a recess, a round recess for that LCD screen. Planet Cryos joins us. He says, contributes $2. He says, just logged in, case looks great. And says, hello everyone. Welcome in, Planet Cryos. Good to see you, good to see you. Thank you for your super chat and your ongoing support. Yeah, looks like a big T, like Thermaltake, doesn't it? There's our side panel with the hole in it, and there's our mesh front. I think that's all that's in here. Okay, that's what I was expecting. I never even opened that up until just now live on camera, but it is exactly what I was expecting. You see the difference in how I react? All right. We'll get to that another time. We can go ahead and put the power supply back in here because we'll reuse that power supply. Now, you'll see this is not a dual chambered case. You don't have to have a dual chambered case. They have rear connected motherboard. It certainly makes it easier, but you also end up with a case that's a lot wider. You know, you end up with those aquariums, and that's fine. You get a lot of room to work in them. They usually have really good airflow. Not that I've ever had to replace a case due to airflow issues, but the internet seems obsessed with this nonsense. And then on top of that, you know, those cases are heavier. So this is lighter. It's still really a wide open case. It should be easy to work on. And well, the amount of cable management access we have back here is not as much as a dual chambered case. It also shouldn't require as much. The fact that we've got these giant loops here is already sort of directing you, route your cables like across the top and down, and we should have no problem putting the back panel on. I laugh because otherwise I just cry. Such a stupid problem to have. All right, so this was the power supply we took out, wasn't it? The EVGA 750. And when we put this in here, oh, it's a little dusty. It's been sitting. We put this in here. Look at all the room we have. See all these extra cables right here? They can all go right down in there in this hole. I'm not going to shove them in there right now, but we have this giant opening. See behind the power supply? From here all the way back, it's a big cavernous area that we can shove our cables into, and if we want to be nice about it, we can put a nice nylon zip tie around each individual power cable, and then it makes it much easier when we need to grab one that we can pull it out without pulling them all out. And as you can see, the cables drag across the table and they're knocking my screws all over the place here. These are just the regular case screws that went to the power supply, and I've left them out on purpose because we're going to reuse them back into this power supply. But it looks like I've inadvertently at least knocked one off the table. But that's par for the course here at Chez Carey. Now let me, having this piece removable, this makes it so much easier to align the power supply. When you have a power supply shroud that is riveted in, doing this one-handed is challenging. It's not difficult, it's just easier if you could remove that shroud, or at least a part of it, to get that to line up. Or if there's a rear frame that comes out, which some cases do, and you just attach your power supply to the frame and slide it in. So I like the design here. I think Thermaltake, you know, thought this through as a builder and said, what is it that we're going to build in that we're not going to be cursing at it? And this is the right way to do it. Now, once I get the first screw started, I shouldn't have to hold it in place anymore. And I've got one more screw laying around here somewhere. And remember, we want that fan on the power supply facing down. And the other thing Thermaltake has done, if you look right down here, it's going to be kind of hard to see on camera. The power supply is raised up off the floor of the case, so it can do what? It can breathe. Remember, it's bringing air in from the bottom, and if this filter were to get clogged, as most customers don't clean these filters because they don't know they exist, you will not totally suffocate your power supply. It'll then start, through the vacuum of nature, pulling air in from the side. Granted, it won't be filtered air, but at least it's breathing. That's really, really well thought out design. Now again, Thermaltake's not paying me, and they've never sent me anything for free ever. What I'm telling you is coming from the heart as a PC builder and what I value personally and what I'm looking for my customers, because they don't know to look for themselves. That's why they trust in me. That's why they pay me. If I'm just going to slap stuff together at the lowest price for the highest profit, why would they hire me ever again? Now, I know I have one more screw for that power supply around here. And here's the thing. That screw is nothing special. It's a standard case screw. And the only reason I want that specific one is if I don't pick it up now, it'll stay on the floor forever. But these are very common. When it comes to the regular case screws, many cases will use these standard case screws, but these screws actually came with the power supply, and they also, with this case, came with the case, the exact same screw. So in that way, some screws from one case to another can be reused, but in other cases, there are screws for certain areas of mounting, whether it's 2.5-inch drives or 3.5-inch drives or other things like fans where you've got to use the screws that came with the case. And so if you always have them, regardless if they're redundant or individually unique, either way you're good to go. Rather than trying to determine which ones are worth keeping, they're all worth keeping. Okay, let me put this one last screw in here. Looks like my power supply is just a little bit tilted, so I'm going to loosen the screws up so I can just move the power supply a little bit here so it can line up. It's one of the reasons we don't normally tighten the screws down until they're all started first. And then you don't have to worry about going back and doing what I just did, which is to loosen them in order for the fourth one. I tightened all three, and then the fourth one wasn't lined up right. Okay, this is already so much better. Okay, here's that big troublesome motherboard power cable that was preventing us from putting our case panel on. Because, it's the industry standard and is actually quite thin. But yeah, this was the problem. See how far that sticks out? But what we're going to do is we're going to run that through the provided cable management sleeves or Velcro ties and routes, so that automatically, with any case, not just a back-mounted case, if this were plugged in the other side and coming out of this grommet right here, we'd still be bringing it down universally. The problem is, bring it down where? And here, they've already set it for you. Just follow the yellow brick case. Okay. Been watching too many trailers for Wicked. Let's put that down. And we're just temporarily tying that down. And you can clearly see we're not going to have any problems putting that back panel back on. In fact, you probably wouldn't have any problems putting that back panel on for literally any case on the market that supports the back connectors, except that specific Sama case. It stands alone in that sort of disrespect and design, just bad design. All right, CPU power, that's gonna go, one of these says 1 and one of these says 2. I think 1 is closest to the edge of the case. Okay, that's on. Once again, we'll be able to just run that straight down. You see how that sticks out right here? That's where my concern is. It's like, okay, Where's the back of our case going? If I take these cables right now, just to stop where we're at before we go any further, I want to make sure that we don't have this problem again. Let's tie this up for a second. Give me this wire tie. This was the cable that ran to the fan controller. Do you see a fan controller back here? I don't. Thank goodness. Put that in there, put all that in there, just to see if the back panel goes on, because that does jut out quite a bit. But if we were to, we've got some little bridges down here for cable ties. So if I grab that rear panel, we have two major things that are different here. One, this isn't just clipping in. We've got screws to secure it. And if anything, I'm bumping into these cables down here, not this one up here. Just so you know what's going on. Slide it forward. And somewhere I'll find the thread. Okay, it's not bowing at all. It is right up against that cable. There's probably maybe a millimeter between that cable and this cable, but it's just enough. And no problems with the big motherboard power cable whatsoever. That was the only one I was worried about, and we cleared it easily. And again, with the screws securing it instead of just pushing it on, if I take the screw out, if that cable's pushing on this, then the panel should want to fall out. And you'll see the panel does open right back here, but not up front. And partly what's springing that back is that power cable. And what we can do to help reduce or minimize that is simply use the little wire tie down point right here in the case and attach that with a nylon zip tie. But we're not putting anywhere near the extreme amount of contortion onto that cable that the Sama case was requiring. And again, if you're running with a dual chambered case, you're going to have twice or three times more room than this. But this doesn't prevent the cable, the case panel from going on, nor does it cause the case panel to bow. And again, even if it did, those thumb screws secure the panel anyway. So I'm good with that. I'm not good with both at the same time. Give me one or the other. That's all I'm saying. Now, the top of this case has two USB 3 Type A's and a USB Type C. A lot of the cheaper cases only give you one Type A port, and you just lose the other one. Too bad, so sad. It's built into your motherboard, but the case manufacturer was too cheap to spend the extra 20 cents to give you that extra. That would be 20 cents less profit for them. And you forever lose that front USB port, forever. So when I'm buying cases, if they don't have two USB ports up top, and I mean two Type A's, because when you plug in the cable, whether it's USB 2 or USB 3, that cable provides the access to two USB ports. And when your case manufacturer only returns one to you, that means they're ignoring the other one, which will remain unused for the life of your computer. But hey, you saved a few dollars on your case. Now, the USB Type C, the 3.1, you only get one of those. In many cases, you don't get any. But if I ever look at a case, and it only gives me one USB Type A, I feel like they're ripping me off. Now, there are cases where I will make an exception. I think the Johnsbow TK1 was such a unique case. I just thought, you know, it's so different, I'm willing to sacrifice one of my USB ports on the front. But I don't like doing it. You could do the opposite. You could give me two USB 3s and two USB 2s. I'm good with that. But to just give me one when the connector takes up two means I'm wasting one. I've paid for it and I can't use it. And that's decided by your case manufacturer. And that's decided by you on who you choose. Pay attention to those details if that matters to you the way it matters to me. Now, just hooking that up, if all we do is right now, we don't have to do anything else, we could fire this up. You know, just plug HDMI and keyboard and mouse. This will fire up. However, I'd like to see the color of these fans, so I wouldn't mind giving these fans some power. And rather than hooking up a power switch, we can use the power switch on the case. So with just a few more connectors, we'll have this powered up. So why not? With everything being wired in the back here, you'll see I've got my USB Type-C, and that's just going to go on right there. Easy. That's our USB 3 rather. This is our USB-C. This is our front audio. So the front audio is going to go right here, right back there. Our USB-C cable goes right below the USB 3 cable right here. I mean, how does it get any easier than this? And then we should have front panels connector, which, yeah, this one says F panel, and that will probably be down here somewhere. I'm going to guess this one is it right here, I think. Well, that was easy. Nothing to it. And do you see any cables up front? No, you don't. Except for our power supply, not our power supply, our cooler here. Now what we can do is run this cable for our CPU fan right back here, and all the fan headers for CPU fan are right here at the top, just on the back of the board instead of the front. So we'll plug that one into the right proper header. We've got our ARGB, which controls the RGB color of the cooler. We'll run that back here as well. And that can go right onto the ARGB plug right here in the back. That's done. Then if we want to hook up these two case fans up front, just to see the RGB, we do also have one in the back here, but let's take a quick look. If I take the wire tie off of here, everything's already plugged in for us, and no fan controller. Have I said that enough times? Plus, you can add more fans right here on this extension, or you could totally take this extension off if you could reach where you need to go with this. And then there's an extension for your ARGB plug as well. So I'm going to leave this on for now because I'd rather have too much cable than not enough. And this can literally go on any fan header on our motherboard, and we have several here to pick from. We've got a couple right above the power. We can use either one of those. Doesn't matter. They're all going to power these two fans. And I'm just going to haphazardly plug it on right now because I'm not interested in making it an efficient cable routing. I just want to demonstrate what it looks like. And this is our ARGB plug, which we should have another one because I already used one up here. And we can do one of two things. We can take the plug that came from the cooler and plug it in a series, right? So that it continues on like an extension cord, where it takes one and it gives one. So that fan on the cooler, or the RGB on the cooler fan, will be in synchronization with the RGB on the front fans, all through this one plug, all through this one header on the board. This board, I think, has two headers. I think it's got one on the top and one on the, yeah, there's one down here, and then there's that one up there. But just to be quick and dirty, we are all fired up. I mean, it's that easy. We can peel this plastic off of here, right? And let's turn it on. I mean, you couldn't ask for an easier build, which is exactly the opposite of what that Sama case was. And that's why I got so upset. It's not like I got the Sama case for $5. For what you paid, it wasn't that much more to just get this one. 20 bucks? I mean, come on. Here's the problem. I didn't know. That's why I make these videos. So when you make your decision, you'll know better. I didn't know better.
I thought there was a minimal standard to have a back case or back plug compatible motherboard case, but there doesn't appear to be any. They're still making stuff up. HDMI. I need HDMI and internet. So here's my HDMI right here. Plug that back in the board. I don't think this has been turned on since Studio B, so we're probably missing some Windows updates here. But this should be so much better. And we'll come back with a part 2 on this, where we're going to switch the cooler out, and we'll add the LCD screen later this month, if everything comes in. Power on, power on. First time we put this together live, unscripted, fires right up, everything's just like it should be. Let's jump over to camera 2 input, which is the output of this computer. Let's see what it's doing. It's loading Windows. Hey, everything's working as I'm expecting it to. That makes me happy. It's funny how those two things go together, expectations and happiness. Let's go to full screen over here for me, and let's hit Windows Update because I'm curious. Well, wait a minute. That's gotta, there it goes. Let's go to Settings and Windows Update. Oh, I gotta activate this copy of Windows. I'm gonna do that by going to SCD keys and using my 30% off discount. It comes out to $15 and change US. I'm gonna buy a Windows 10 Pro product key. I'm gonna enter that Windows 10 Pro product key right here into Windows 11, and it will accept it as a Windows 11 Pro product key for about $3 less than a Windows 11 Pro product key would cost us. So save the $3 is all I'm saying. It'll stay activated and tied to the motherboard for the life of the motherboard. You cannot move it to another computer. So make sure you activate as the very last thing you do to ensure that you're not having to return anything. Because if I have to return the board, I'm returning the license that I just bought with it, and I'll have to spend another $15 and buy another license, which isn't breaking the bank, but I'd prefer to not spend money I don't have to. So just plan ahead accordingly. Now, while we're downloading these updates, I just want to give you another look here at the side. And just to further show you what this is going to look like, imagine there's going to be a screen here and a screen here. And we'll take this and we'll peel the plastic. Ooh, my caffeine is working today. Here we go. Now, even though we're not done, you would never know that unless you had to work on it. You'd say, oh, nobody's done anything back here. But from an end user perspective, and yeah, the rear fan, we haven't hooked up the rear fan because there's no RGB on it. We are going to hook it up later. That'll take all of 3 seconds. In fact, I could probably do it right now while the machine's on. I'm not going to. I'm just saying I could. Never mind that. Never mind this. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. And then that other little piece goes on. Like right now, we don't have a liquid cooler up here, so this piece can go back on up on top. It's got 2 little tabs that slide into slots. It just drops down. And then this piece, just like a little miniature case cover, just slides over. Goes on here like this. That is such a more pleasant building experience, at least for a rear connected motherboard. Do you see any cables? There is a cable, right? It's the, I see it now. The rear case fan cables. That's when I turned it, I didn't see them. That's because the case manufacturer has left them here in the front, and we could just move those to the back. Now there's no RGB on this, so you just literally can plug it into any fan header. Well, that's a short cable. They did include for us an extension cable, and I'm glad they did, because this motherboard doesn't give us a fan header where this cable for the rear fan can reach. It's pretty short. But using a fan extension, in fact, if we just use the fan extension already on the front fans, it does reach, and as you can see, it's turning now. So that explains that fan extension cable. And now all the fans are connected together. Case fans all share the same power. They're just connected one to the other like Christmas lights. The CPU fan is controlled independently, so it can speed up or slow down depending on how hot the CPU is getting. And then the RGB is sequenced with the RGB on the front fans through the single RGB header. And we can use ASRock's software, MSI's Mystic Light software to control that RGB. Right now it's defaulting just to the rainbow colors. But now, let me try this one more time. Can you see any cables? When I put this back on. Now, I was thinking this was a smoked glass cover, and I'm glad it's not, because what a shame to hide those internals. Now you might say, okay, Carey, it looks good. It's easy to work on. But is it actually performing anywhere near as good as it looks? Well, you tell me. If we go back over to camera 2, we look at the specs. For those of you who didn't watch us prep this board, check this out. We're going to go down here. We're going to right click, go to System. This is a Core i9 14900, not a 900K. 14900. That 2 gigahertz is just as idle speed. This actually cranks up to, if it's not 6 gigahertz, it's just shy. We've got to look at that. We have 32 gigs of that OLOY RAM with Windows 23H2. So we have to put 24H2 on here. With regards to our storage, this is our Crystal Disk Mark. We're running a Gen 4 NVMe drive here, running at 6,600 megabytes per second. That is likely a Feijing drive, if I remember correctly. So that's, again, you can avoid those name brands. Feijing's using the same controller and NAND chips as other name brand NVMe manufacturers with the same 5-year warranty, but for $20 to $50 less. Yeah, it's not all Feijing drives. I'm specifically talking about the S880 line. They do make slower, cheaper Gen 4 drives. This is the high end of the Gen 4 drives from Feijing. Fanxiang, I'm not sure how to say it, but I like it. And then let me go back to Windows Update because it's still updating in the background. Don't be worried that I closed the window. It doesn't affect the progress. Upon reboot, when we check for updates again, I'll bet you it's going to offer us 24H2. Whereas before we used to have to update it manually, Microsoft is now pushing it out. So if you've been waiting, unless you have Ubisoft games, Ubisoft is already releasing updates. It's partially their fault and partially Microsoft's fault for that discrepancy. But other than that, any questions? Any concerns? Is there anything about this video that I've made today that isn't clear on the purpose on why we've made it and the points we're trying to get across? You don't have to agree with them. These things may not matter to you. But my standards are my standards for my customers and my business, and they exist so that I can stay in business and keep my customers happy. Usually it's keeping customers happy. That's what leads to staying in business. Let's take a quick look at what I've been missing here in the chat. Old Man 55 says it sure catches the eye. It's a very different color. I don't have any case this color, and I've been wanting this color, and every time I look for it, it's always sold out. So I imagine they probably don't make that many in this color. Not that everybody's buying them, it's just they probably make a primary of white and black is probably the most sold color. Luke Greenia says, nice, I like it. I like it. There's Ron Barnish, and let's see, Paul Howe mentioned that the rear fan wasn't working, so we already caught up with that. Amazing Airshow video says, is there any concern with getting your Microsoft activation keys outside of Microsoft? Can the original purchaser of the key get any of your personal information later on? First and foremost, unless you're a celebrity or a public figure, no one cares about your personal information. This is self-inflated sense of importance that it's just there for marketing purposes. And no, to answer your question, no, they're not interested. They're selling you legitimate legal license keys that would be considered gray market. So it's my understanding, and they may not be gray market, but let's just assume that they are. That means they're sold in a different market that they were intended for. If you have been in photography for a while, gray market cameras, especially when you buy them out of like New York City, there's a lot of camera shops that would sell, high-end Olympus cameras for 30% off the retail price. And you think, well, how can they do that? Well, come to find out, they were for the Japanese market and they have no US warranty or support. But when you're saving 30% off the price, maybe a deal worth making. When it comes to buying your license key, if it is gray market or even if it isn't, one thing is it's not illegal. Two, it's 90% less in cost, in this example using SCD keys, than Microsoft. And if you are worried about that and you want to make sure that Microsoft gets that extra 90%, we're not telling you not to buy it from Microsoft. Or you can go to Newegg or you can go to Amazon and you can pay $120 for that license key. We're not telling you not to. If that makes you feel better, and if you think that somehow your identity is any more protected in that purchase, you don't really know who the seller is. So you might be a seller that's just buying them for $15 and selling them to suckers as legitimate. There's no way to know. They are legitimate. The question is, are you buying a retail key or an OEM key? All the Dell computers, HP, Acer, all those manufacturers, all the mini PC manufacturers, they buy the keys cheaper because they're OEM keys, and the condition is Microsoft says, we'll sell you the key cheaper, but we're not warranting it. That's on you. Then when they can sell the key cheaper, that means the manufacturer of the PC can sell the PC cheaper, and the manufacturer says, we'll take care of the support, just give us the cheaper price. So you're your own support on an OEM key. OEM keys cannot be moved around to different computers any more than you can take the license plate off of your car and go and put it on another car without paying fees for that. Because it's $15 for a new license key, just buy another key if you're going to move it. So what? You're still paying. You'd have to buy the license key 8 times from SCD Keys before you'd match the price of one Microsoft retail price. So unless you're going to move that more than 8 times, which you can do with a retail key, one at a time, you can't put it on 2 at the same time. You could also just buy 8 individual keys. So either way, whatever you think is best. If you're nervous about it and you don't believe me, then don't buy them. Do us both a favor, don't buy them. But if you want to save money and you want a real, legal, legitimate copy that was only intended for a different market, which is the worst case scenario, and it may not even be that. It's just the only way I can imagine they're able to get the price so low. What do you care? It activates the same, and Microsoft support's pretty much non-existent for consumers anyway. So I don't know why anybody would give Microsoft all that money just to get the exact same thing in return. But if you're worried about it, then you buy from Microsoft. I don't have any problem with that. I'm not telling you not to. And if you don't believe me, contact Microsoft and ask them. This company's been selling Windows license keys for over 15 years. Microsoft is fully aware of it. And Microsoft has lots of attorneys, and yet there's no problem. So if you want to reach out to Microsoft and verify what I'm telling you, have at it. I encourage you to do so. But for everybody else that has other things to do, they are legal, they are legit, and they're cheaper, and they work. And they're guaranteed to work. So decide for yourself. Let's see. Mitch Morrison joins us in the chat room. Hey, Mitch, there's the man. So yeah, we'll use Mitch's old motherboard, and we'll put it in that Sama case. And I shouldn't have any of the cable management issues. And it's an older board, and the case is kind of a cheap case. They go together. This board in this case also goes together much better. Trevor Dunn says, I'm not sure if I like the case color. It looks like a JCB. I don't know what a JCB is, but I like it. I like it. You know why I like it? I like it because it's different. I wouldn't want to see a room full of these. It might be a little much. But to have one, I build thousands of computers. I've never built a yellow one before. So we'll spend our money how we spend our money. I'm not here to tell you this is what you have to have. It's just for me, I could have ordered this in multiple colors. They're all mostly the same of what we already have. We've never had a yellow one before. So we'll check it off the bucket list for better or for worse. Let's see, what else comments do we have? Contact the Pittsburgh Steelers, says Steve Mercure. Maybe they want to buy the PC. Yeah, I suppose you could with those colors, huh? John Mooner wants to know how many mechanical drives can that case accommodate? That's a fair question. I haven't used a mechanical drive in a computer in about 10 years, but it looks like we've got one rear panel back here for a mechanical drive. We've got a space for two 2.5-inch drives along the side. There is no hard drive cage in here, which is why I've got so much room up in the front. And I don't know if Mike's unboxing reviews and how-to is still in the chat room, but he might know the answer to that question. I think it's a big mistake to put mechanical drives in modern computers. If you have an older computer with a mechanical drive in it, or you just like living in the past, I get it. As long as you're only going to put one mechanical drive in it, I'm okay with it. The minute you start putting mechanical drives in your computer case, that's when you're going to start running into problems from cable management, heat, power consumption, as well as just drive failures. I think if this were the 1990s, this is what we did. I understand if you have a lot of data, like you play games and you need the space, so you buy one big, 24, 20, even a 12 terabyte drive. I get it. But if you've got whatever size mechanical drive you have is, and it's not big enough, so you add another one, I think you're making a massive mistake, an error in judgment. If your mechanical drive isn't big enough, I recommend you replace it with a brand new mechanical drive that'll be faster, be under warranty, and minimize the amount of crowdedness you're going to have in your case for cable management and heat, not to mention power consumption. And every drive you add that's mechanical is another failure you will eventually have. It's not a question of if you'll have it, it's when. The older the drive is, the more likely it is, and you're going to lose everything on it unless you back that up. And chances are, if you have a drive of that size, you either don't have it filled or you're not backing it up, like just generally speaking. So I don't really talk about the mechanical drive capabilities of most cases because I don't want to encourage that old behavior. If you have that much data, you should be using a network attached storage drive or an external USB drive, or you should only have one drive, one mechanical drive. So as long as the case accommodates one, I'm happy. The minute I see cases that accommodate more than one drive, unless it's designed to be a server, I think you're sending the wrong message to the consumer. You're encouraging them to exercise outdated, outmoded behavior patterns that are likely very expensive and frustrating to maintain going forward. At the end of the day, it's your choice how you want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to run into problems, or you want to hear that noise of mechanical drives running. And whatever justification you use, I'm not interested. I'm just telling you, solid state drives are far more reliable, they're far faster, and they're not that much more expensive anymore until you exceed 2 terabytes. And if you've got more than 2 terabytes of data you're using regularly, you need to start thinking about external storage and getting yourself tied away from an anchor of one PC that when that one PC goes down, your whole world goes down. You're putting all your eggs in one basket, and when you're dealing with multiple drives, you're adding more eggs. It just makes your loss bigger. It makes your stress and anxiety worse, and the odds of it happening increase with every drive you add that's mechanical. So, that doesn't answer your question, but it's why I don't really talk about it. I feel like we've moved on, but that doesn't mean you have to. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says it'll hold two 2.5-inch drives, and it'll also hold two 3.5-inch drives. So for a total of 4. Okay, well, I'm actually glad to hear it, that it'll only hold two 3.5-inch. I just don't know where they go. I know one goes, I can tell by looking at it, one goes here, two 2.5-inch drives go here. So I'm just wondering, where does the third one go? It's probably in our documentation. But you'll see there's a thumb screw right here that takes this panel off. And then there's a thumb screw here and here that takes these two off for the 2.5-inch drives. So remember, I'm not telling you what to do. I ain't your daddy. I don't care what your mama says. I wasn't there. As a tech, I want to sell you something that's going to be reliable and trouble-free as much as possible. And to do that, we want to avoid any mechanical parts. So things like fans, anything that physically turns, hard drives, fans, those all fail. Mechanical DVD, CD drives, they all fail. All of them fail, okay? I can't tell you when they're going to fail, but they will all fail. When we stick with solid state, our odds of failure are significantly reduced. Not eliminated, but significantly reduced. Power spikes can still damage things. Not much we can do about a CPU fan. That's going to fail at some point, but that's a very inexpensive and quick fix, as opposed to, say, a mechanical hard drive where all your data's on it. Perhaps it's not backed up because there is so much data. You don't have anything to back it up to, or you don't want to take the time because it's going to take a long time, and then you just lost everything. And I'm done with those phone calls. I am so done with these people that are in psychosis crying on the phone with me. It's not my fault. I didn't do it, and there's nothing I can do to help them that's within their budget. Because chances are the reason they're in the position is they didn't have the money to begin with. And now that they've lost it, they've lost everything. And when you tell them what it's going to cost to send it in for data recovery, it just shatters them. Man, I don't want to be that guy. But what can I do? It's my line of work, and I can't stop the phone calls from happening. But what I can do is strongly advise people, strongly, that at the end of the day, you make your decision. And if you, and you will, suffer that loss, you remember you were warned and you decided you were going to take the chance anyway. Don't blame me for it. It's not my fault. I didn't do it. All right, back over to the chat. We're just at the 2-hour mark here, so we're going to get ready to wrap things up. Really enjoy hanging out with you guys and our dialogues. Even if I don't agree or I'm advising you the opposite way, I am encouraging you to have a great computer experience and to not be frustrated with failures and data losses and all the anxiety and frustration that comes with it. If you pick good parts that have good warranties, even in a worst case scenario, you're inconvenienced, but it's not costing you anything other than sending the part back. Most of the companies that have these great warranties also have great support, companies like EVGA. And the companies that do both of these things, the irony of the whole thing is you will likely never need their support and you'll never need their warranty. That's why they offer it for so long, and that's why it's so good, because they're not real busy dealing with a lot of it. It's a cost center, and that cost gets built into the price. So EVGA is not overcharging you, in my opinion, compared to companies like Seasonic. They're a lot of money, and I don't think they're really any better. They've got great support, they've got great warranties, and they honor their warranties, as does Corsair, as does, Asus, Gigabyte, MSI, and ASRock. You shouldn't need them, though. It's pretty rare that you ever need them. But if you buy new parts from AliExpress or some guy on eBay or whatever, good luck. The longevity and sustainability of that purchase over time likely is just going to be you working on the machine again sooner rather than later. So you're going to pay a little now, or you're going to pay a lot later, or you're going to buy it twice. That's usually the way it works. And if you've got a reputation to uphold to customers to maintain your business, well, it's a hard way to make a buck, let me tell you. Fred Vandermeulen said, should you replace an SSD after 8 years? Should you replace a pair of shoes after 2 years? Should you replace the clothes you're wearing after a set amount of time that you've just decided? Most people replace parts because they're no longer meeting their needs. In the case of a solid state drive, it's that its capacity is too small, or the speed in which it's transferring the data is, in 8 years' time, let's say, the speeds have tripled. All right? Whatever they are, they've tripled. Capacity has also tripled. Will that impact you? Is there a benefit for you to have more capacity or more speed? If the answer is yes, after any period of time, 1 year, 10 years, 50 years, should you replace the drive when you have a reason to? Yes. Should we look at the Aztec calendar and we decide that the last day on Earth is 6 years ago? I guess. That seems kind of random. You could also turn all the lights out, take a dart and throw it at the wall and have that decide when to change your SSD. This sort of ritualization is illogical and doesn't follow any logical engineering reasoning. So no, you should not simply replace a drive that's a solid state drive. Those solid state drives will run an average of 70 years. 70 years before you wear them out or they fail under normal use case scenarios. 7-0. So you should replace it when it no longer meets your needs for speed or capacity. And you should always have backups. Because if you have backups, you now have impenetrable bulletproof armor on. That your system could be stolen, it could be encrypted with ransomware, you could have a virus, you could have a drive failure, you could have a power spike, you could have a flood, you could have a natural disaster. I mean, I can go on all day. But as long as you've got your backup, you don't have to worry about how to remove a virus. You don't have to worry about whether or not to pay the ransomware. You don't have to worry about the longevity of your drive. You're bulletproof because you have insurance. Your backup is your insurance. If you can buy a Cronus and you can use a Cronus, it probably costs less than dinner for two for a 1-year license. And you can back up the computer on an automated schedule. You can back it up over the network. You could back it up into the cloud. You're bulletproof, and none of this anxiety is justifiable anymore. It's like driving your car without insurance. Am I going to get into an accident? I hope I don't get into an accident. My whole life will be destroyed. I could go to jail. You want to keep looking over your shoulder in some paranoid schizophrenic state because you don't have insurance? Well, that's what it's like not backing up your data. Because once you back up your data, none of this matters anymore. It's really no big deal. Oh no, my drive died. So what? Drives are cheap. Put another drive in there, recover your data from your backup. You're not paying any data recovery service. You're not waiting 3 or 4 weeks for it. And it costs you one time for a 1-year subscription. And all that anxiety and all that time wasted, all eliminated for a simple little investment today. And if you can't do that, then your data is not important to you. And if your data is not important to you, who cares if your drive dies? You already said your data is not important enough to back up. So just buy another drive and put it in there. Who cares? Not a big deal. Reinstall Windows. You're back in business. Pick a lane and understand where you're going. All right? If the left lane is taking you south and the right lane is taking you north and they branch off, and you know this when you picked your lane, don't complain to me about your destination because that's where you've been headed all along. This is not a major investment of money or time. So, no. No, you should not be replacing a drive simply because it's old. You replace a drive because it no longer meets your needs. That's it. But I appreciate the question. It's something I get frustrated with because to me that's common sense. But I realize I'm a tech, and what's common sense to me, people that are techs go, how do you think that's common sense? Well, from my perspective, it's always been this way since day one. Nothing has changed in over 30 years in this industry. It's the same advice we were giving then that we're giving now. Back it up if it's important, and none of these failures or viruses, none of this stuff matters anymore. You don't have to go through some YouTube video on how to remove a virus. What a complete waste of time. Just restore your backup. Your solution is always the same. Bad hard drive, same solution. Virus, same solution. Ransomware, same solution. Theft, same solution. We're not looking at 15 different videos on each individual topic, breaking it down to minutia that you shouldn't even have to be doing if you had a backup. So, Bill Stodd said, I've got a computer that's currently running 24H2. It's a Dell desktop. It's currently set up offline. It's not Wi-Fi, and there's no Ethernet connection, and the hard drive light is more active than any of my other machines. Do I have any thoughts? Well, we don't know what the hard drive's doing. Right? Windows could be writing swap file information, you could be doing maintenance in the background, or you could have a constant hard drive activity that has been identified in previous iterations of Windows that might apply to you, but it's pretty rare to see that these days. The first thing I would do is I would connect it to the internet, whether it's wired or Wi-Fi, and get your Windows updates. Because if that's a known issue with a prior Windows update, it'll get fixed automatically by allowing the Windows updates. On the other hand, if you want to learn more about that, I think Cyber CPU Tech YouTube channel did a video about constant drive activity, but I'm telling you right now, that affects very few people. And if you just, I know a lot of people think, well, I'm the one that's the very few. No, you're probably not. But if you want to try it, he's got a video that walks you through that. Mark Gaines said, I missed his super chat. I'm sorry, Mark. Let me see if I've missed anybody else's too. I haven't had that screen up in a while. No, it looks like so we had Peter Laycock, and then Mark renewed his membership, and then Charlie Purdy with a super chat, Mike Quinton, Planet Cryos. There he is, Mark Gaines with a 10-pound super chat. He says, I like the color of that case. I hope you got my PayPal I sent before the show. Oh, I forgot about that. I had checked the email before I went live, and I saw that Mark Gaines had contributed like, it was something like $61.38. It was a weird, I guess, translation from pound to US dollar. And I was like, that's a weird amount. But yes, we did get that. And thank you for reminding me, because shame on me. Thank you. Mother brought me up to be polite. Say thank you. Charlie Purdy with a $100 Amazon gift card. Very generous, Charlie. Thank you so, so much. Yeah, there's Mark Gaines, $61.03 in PayPal. You guys are, you guys rock. And of course, our friend Paul Gray down there in Australia with an Amazon gift card earlier before the show started. You guys, I'm telling you, all of that's paying for everything you're seeing on the screen, unless I otherwise say, you know, a company sent us something. That does happen, but not often. Not often enough. So we're constantly shopping on Amazon looking for products we want to review, from cases, power supplies, to coolers. And we've got so much stuff we're backed up in work, but that's why I'm making videos every day, to try and get caught up. That's a good problem to have, because the alternate is we don't have the money to buy the stuff. And then I'm mostly talking and not having anything on the bench to work on. It's different if I'm talking and I haven't gotten to the thing to work on. That's different than not having anything to work on. We've got a lot to do. We've got to put, as I mentioned, our friend Mitch's older motherboard, we're going to put that into that Sama case, and then I'm going to just offload that somewhere locally, just as a used computer, try and get whatever I can get out of it financially so I can put it back into the pool for channel funds. So I'm not solely relying on your funds. I'm also trying to sort of recycle them, and just, it's diminishing returns. If I spend X amount of dollars for something on camera, I'll never be able to sell it for what I paid for it. On the other hand, if it just sits around here, I get nothing. So I'm trying to add that back into the funding for the channel content as well. And so far, it's been working really, really good. And that's what's happening behind the scenes and how we're able to bring you so much stuff. Now, if we could get Thermaltake to send us some stuff the way they do for Mike's unboxing and reviews, that'd save us a little bit of money, because they're products we want to review anyway. But we're cut out for work for a while. That shouldn't be a problem. And thanks to you guys for making this possible. Jay said he's glad he purchased a Sama 4503 instead of the Sama Neview 2351 that I used. I don't know. I just know enough that if a case manufacturer, whether that's Fractal Design with that Focus G, if you will release a product that crappy, I'm not interested in any of your products. So if you've got a good line and a cheap line, you need to change your product name. You need to have your great value line, and then you need to have your name brand line. You should not dilute the value of your name brand by mixing cheap budget crap with quality components, because a consumer says, well, this Kingston flash drive, is it good? I don't know. Well, does Kingston make good flash drives? They do. But does Kingston make bad flash drives? They do. So which one is this Kingston? I don't know, so maybe don't buy Kingston, because they just label it as Kingston. Now, if they had a budget brand and they used a different name, Queenston, Juniorston, I don't know, give it a distinct brand name that says this is our budget line, and then keep your good quality stuff under your name brand. And that way your name brand will maintain value. Rolex does not make a cheap watch. Ferrari doesn't make a cheap car. And if they did, they would do it under a different name. It's just common sense. Why would you dilute the value of your brand and confuse customers who don't know that all you sell is crap or all you sell is good stuff? It should only be good stuff on this brand and all the crap stuff or budget stuff on this brand. You set your customers' expectations and you'll have a happy customer. Robert Jones says, can you tell me more about UDIMs? I think he means the CU DIMs. Basically, the summary of this, and I don't know a lot about it, is if you're trying to overclock and you're trying to get, like you're just somebody who's never happy. You can never get enough performance and everything that's on the market is too slow for you, then CU DIMs are for you. If you're a regular, normal, common, not normal, but just common computer user, you won't notice any difference but the price. It is essentially an enthusiast product or a product that would be for an exceptionally demanding user with deep pockets. And that's the essence of what I know about it. It would not apply to us or what we do here. We're not overclocking here. We don't encourage it. These systems are so rocket ship fast. The only thing that needs to be overclocked is the end user. And until we figure out how to fix that, I don't see any point in working on this. This is already faster than most people could ever keep up with. I don't get it. Now, if I meet one of those people, I'll let you know. But so far, they only seem to exist in words online. I've never actually met somebody who pushes their computer that hard. I've met people who do work on their computer, and the work processes are very, very resource intensive, where they're gonna, not hesitate to spend $10,000 on a computer. But I've never met an enthusiast who's overclocking who needed it. It's just a temporary 10 or 15% boost that is negated with the next CPU release within the next 6 or 8 months, usually, of when they've accomplished all of this hassle. And it's great, I guess, as a hobby, But CU DIMs outside of that use case scenario don't really seem to be for regular folks. Again, Mike's unboxing reviews and how-to may have some experience with this, but that's my understanding at this point. And that's why I've not bought any or used any on the channel. Thank you for the questions, guys. I appreciate your questions. If you have other questions, please ask them now. Bull142 says he got those Klipsch speakers we showed that were on sale. He says they sound great. Mike Quinton says he cannot find the Lazy Susan you mentioned back in the kitchen days, but can't remember the brand name. I don't know the brand name either. That's why I always have a link in the bottom of the video notes of every video I make that says to buy the things you see on the channel, visit my Amazon store. It's been there in every video I've ever made. And if you click on that, it'll bring up all the products from the screwdrivers to the Lazy Susan. And if it's not in there for any reason, let me know. I can't keep track of it all. There's over 100 items there. And different viewers are interested in different things. And the Lazy Susan, I've been asked about this now for over 10 years, and the answer's been the same for 10 years. It's in the video notes. But again, I do encourage your questions. If you didn't know that, I'll just have to keep repeating myself. That's fine. That's my burden to carry as a live broadcaster. Again, if you don't find it in there for any reason, let me know. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To says, please call me Mike or Mike's Unboxing. When you say the whole name, it makes me feel like I'm in trouble. Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How-To. Please come to the principal's office. Please come to the headmaster's office. Mike's a little generic. You know, you got to have a name like Carey. I say Mike, there might be several Mikes in the chat room. They don't know which one I'm talking about. We're going to come up with a nickname. What's the British nick? So the British nickname for Gary is Gaz, right? And for Jeremy, it's Jezza. So is there a British nickname for Mike? Bajan Guy wants to know, did the guy ever brought his computer that was hanging, the one who lives about a couple hours away? Computer that was hanging. You mean locking up, freezing? I don't know what you're talking about. Remember that movie, you know, the one with the guy and the girl who did the thing? I guess. I don't know what you're referring to, so you'd have to be more specific. John Paul Bacon says, Mike UB would be good. Bajan Guy said, yeah, it was locking. So whose computer was locking up? Somebody in the chat room? I don't know what you're talking about. Something we had here? Well, clearly, if we had it here, I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes I don't even see half the messages you guys are talking about in the chat room. So you might be assuming, or was it something I read aloud? I don't know what you're talking about. If there's a chance for me to demonstrate, you know, a customer problem for a diagnostic and a repair, I will have shown it. In fact, if I haven't shown it, probably means that never happened, I guess. I don't know. Sorry. Patrick wants to know, is it better to do a clean install or a clone when I install my Neview M2 boot drive? Oh, my Neview is a company, and then Newer. He's going to replace his boot drive. He's got a Samsung 990 Evo Plus and a Samsung 990 Pro 1 terabyte as his gaming M.2. Right now his games are on a SATA SSD. You know, I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer here. It's always a safe bet to do a clean install. But since none of the hardware is changing, you're not changing your motherboard, you're not changing your drivers, probably a clone is all you're going to need. On the other hand, you could always do a clone first, and if there's any problems with it, then go through the hassle of the reinstall. Or if you just want it done right the first time and not have to revisit any problems, then just start with the reinstall. So there's no right or wrong here. It's just really your preference. I would probably just do a clone, honestly. I think that's all you need. Renee says it'd be Miguel in Spanish. They speak a lot of Spanish in the UK, do they? Jay Main wants to know, repeat the name of the SSD brand you usually use in your builds. Well, we'll use Western Digital a lot, specifically the SN850X. We use a lot of Samsung. And when it comes to budget performance, it's Finalizing. F-A-N, like a fan, like these fans on the front of the computer, and X-I-A-N-G, which I think in Chinese is pronounced Xiang, but I'm not sure. X-I-A-N-G, with the word fan in front of it. Fan Xiang, or Feijing. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. If you simply go to Amazon or Google and type in S as in Samuel, 880 NVMe, it will pull up that product line from that company, which will have links to all the other products they make. So you don't have to spell out that foreign name, which for us Americans who don't speak that language, it doesn't seem like those letters go together or how they're pronounced. And if you can't pronounce it, how the heck are you going to spell it? Mara has generously delivered the direct link to Amazon for the Lazy Susan. But again, I want to reiterate that it should have always been there in the video notes in the Amazon store. So if you're ever curious about any of the screwdrivers or tools that we use, the iFixit toolkits, even the zip ties, the magnetized screwdriver tools, all of that, the keyboards, everything you see should be in the Amazon shop, just for future reference. Shane Perkins says, oh, well, he's translating what the other person said. If that's what we're talking about, is the gentleman we built a computer for that was replacing a computer he had locked up, it appears what the gentleman has done is he bought a Asus pre-built desktop computer. And before even turning the machine on, he manipulated the hardware. He, for various reasons, decided he was going to upgrade the storage to NVMe or upgrade the NVMe it had. He decided that when he plugged his speakers in, he was only getting stereo and not surround sound, so he needed a better sound card. He likes to repurpose old equipment rather than replace it. This is always a recipe for disaster. So I have this old sound card laying around. I'll slap that in my new machine so I can get my 5.1 surround sound. I'm going to take this RAM out and I'm going to replace the RAM. Before he even established if the computer was working, he was already modifying it right out of the box without even turning it on. This is a big, big error in judgment. Now, a lot of this information was not volunteered to me up front, but was later learned as the discussion went on. As the gentleman removed the parts that he added to this pre-built so he could send them to me to repurpose again into the build we did for him from his NVMe's, not his sound card, wouldn't you know it, when he put it back factory, all of his blue screen issues went away, negating the whole reason why he called me to begin with. This is an important lesson. This isn't meant to embarrass anybody. It's just, this is a very avoidable problem by simply verifying the foundation upon which you build on before you build on it. In other words, you wouldn't build a house on a piece of land without testing that land, otherwise your house could sink into the swamp. And then we built another one and it sank into the swamp. And we built another one. It too sank into the swamp. But the fourth one, it stayed up. It's a Monty Python skit. It's, again, for me, very common sense. Before you change anything, you have to know its current state. Otherwise, you won't know if what you changed made it worse, or did you just buy a bad machine? So this gentleman concluded this is the worst machine he's ever bought. It just randomly locks up. I can't make it stay on. And it's Asus crap. Asus, Asus, Asus. And it's not me, me, me. You know the expression when you point your finger, there's three fingers pointing back at you, right? It never occurred to him that he caused his own problem, because I know what I'm doing. I know how to put a sound card in. I'm not an idiot. I've built computers before, right? This is the logic that happens upstairs. And it's like, well, it's not personal. Stop making it personal. It's just not a sound method, especially if you're in business. You can't stay in business doing that to customers. You've got to know what you're working with first before you... If I'm a chef and I bring you some food, and the first thing you do, without even so much as tasting the food, is you grab the salt or the ketchup, how dare you? Try it first, then decide if it needs those condiments. Figure out what it tastes like before you know what's missing. Well, it's kind of the same thing. So as the gentleman was removing the parts he added, suddenly all the crashing went away. When the crashing went away, and I want you to think about this, he no longer needed to buy a computer from me, but He knows the computer I was building for him is far better, far more serviceable, far more upgradable than any pre-built you can buy. So he didn't change his mind. He wanted a computer built for me, and he has since received the computer, sold his old computer since it's working now. He gets clear conscience that he's selling a working computer by putting it back the way it was, the way he bought it. He no longer needs that sound card. He even offered to send me a 10-year-old fan that was brand new in a package to add to the new build. And of course, I'm going to say, no, I'm not putting your old fan in a brand new build. Well, it's never been used. I don't care. They're not as efficient. It's dated looking. I'm not going to jeopardize the quality of my build because you don't want to spend $12 on a new fan. This is how many home users are that like to do things themselves. A lot of people have big DVD collections and they won't let them go. They say, this gentleman falls into that category. Our friend Mitch, he's a big movie collector, and I'm not specifically saying these two gentlemen, there's a lot of people like this. And they go, well, I like my DVDs. I go, well, that's great if you like standard definition video, but we've got HD now. You don't need to be taking up all the room in your house for your DVD collection when, now there's Blu-rays, and then beyond Blu-rays, there's streaming. So all of this stuff is sort of yesterday, right? And the people who do this are always older people. Younger people don't do this. If you want to do that, you're free. Nobody's stopping you, right? But when your time here is done, there's likely no one in your family who wants any of that stuff, right? It's a collection for you, and when you go, that'll probably go too. Who cares, right? As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. You don't have to keep up. You don't have to have better quality. You don't have to start over again. You spent years building this collection. My mom had all the VHS tapes of Star Trek, and then she had all the DVDs to replace the VHS tapes of Star Trek. Now there's the Blu-rays, which we wouldn't even buy because it's streaming, and when she passed, all that stuff went to Goodwill. It's gone. Nobody in the family wanted it. So for me, I've got enough stuff for 3 people. The last thing I want to do is start collecting things because I don't have any room. So once people have made this massive investment into these media collections, it's good enough. They don't necessarily want it to be in HD. They're like, it's fine just the way it is. Why wouldn't I keep using it? Well, the problem is it's getting harder and harder to find a DVD player. The case this gentleman needed an optical drive. He has every right to want that. He has every right to want that. But manufacturers aren't selling as many. So they're not going to spend time in production making things the general consumer isn't buying anymore. So now you're sort of buying what's left over. And then once what's left over is gone, you're out of luck. I mean, you might have some great 8-track tapes. Good luck finding a player. Floppy disks. Good luck finding a floppy disk drive. Yes, you can buy some floppy disk drives on Amazon that connect through USB, but good luck finding one you can put in the case. Jazz disks and zip drives, they're gone. Old iOmega tape drives, they're gone. Could you find one that works? Yes. Could you find blank media somewhere? Probably. But it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. You're not going to have a big selection, and you'll always be limited by the technology of that era. And if you're okay with all of that, and I want to emphasize, I'm not criticizing that, but your life is far more difficult than it could be if you would make the choice to embrace what's available today, 100%. Just get rid of all that old stuff. That's just my attitude. We grew up in the 80s with nothing. And now that stuff like a simple ceiling fan, we couldn't afford that. That was like $250 in 1980s money. You can get them under $100 today. Everybody's got ceiling fans now. We lived in a house without air conditioning in Arizona. The air conditioner broke. We could not afford to fix it. Nobody in my family was handy. I became the way I am and learned how to fix stuff because I had to. It was either live this way because nobody's coming to rescue you, or get off your butt and learn how to fix it yourself. Take your pick. You want to continue to just live in mediocrity, or do you want to improve the quality of your life? Because everybody in my family chose to live in mediocrity. I am the only one in my immediate family that started fixing things, not having any clue what I was doing, and figured it out. That's why to this very day, I don't like reading the directions. That's just not how we did it back in the day. And those lessons I learned helped me fix the next related thing. And the more I did it, the better I got. And believe me, my family discouraged me from doing it because they were sure I was going to set the house on fire. Came close a couple times. They weren't entirely wrong, but that's how I learned. There was no Stanford University in my, even if I could have been accepted, there was no money to send me there. So it was either you accept the fate of just this is what life is dealt, or you make that change and you make the effort to make your life better and figure it out and do it all yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. And so for that reason, I have a very strong opinion when it comes to holding on to old tech, because we had a bunch of old stuff in the 1980s that was carried over from the 1970s. And our quality of life was reduced because of it. I'll tell you a quick story. When I bought my first house, one of the things I hated about a kitchen sink was the divider down the middle. What's that for? Well, I was told people wash the dishes on one side and rinse them in the other. I'm like, but if you're rinsing dishes you just washed in the same water, that water's getting dirtier, and it's going to make your clean dishes dirty when you're rinsing them over time. As you're doing more and more dishes, you're leaving more and more remnants in the rinse water. That's disgusting. And what's the dishwasher for? And the sink, it wouldn't take very long to just have stuff piled up 2 feet above the sink, because the sink was shallow and split in half. One big pan could barely fit in there. And in my family, that could sit in there for a week before anybody would get off their butt. They would probably wash the pan when they needed it. Probably. My mom worked all day, so she wasn't going to come home and wash dishes very often. She was already tired from a full day at work. Both of my parents worked and barely made ends meet. So when I bought my very first house, I learned that there are these sinks that's one big tub that's 2.5 times deeper than the sink I grew up with. Didn't even know that was a thing. And I said, oh, I could load a bunch of stuff in that sink and then it wouldn't hang off the edges. It's got to be expensive. It's $200. $200? That's it? We went through all of this for $200? So I do this in my house, right? I go see my mom, and there's that sink overflowing as it always has. And I said, Mom, you know you could buy a bigger sink, right? You don't have to have it this way. And I want you to understand, my mom was a tell it like it is, very straight shooter, right? She looks at me defiantly, like I've insulted her. Like, I think I'm offering new information. My mom must have never known how cheap it was to replace a sink. And my mom says to me, and I swear her face was, do you know where I got that sink? I assume it came with the house. She goes, no. I bought that sink at a swap meet for $5. And she's proud of it. Okay. Well, back in the day when that house was purchased, probably $5 was all she could afford for a sink. But she's doing better since then, right? And she still won't let that sink go. And she is proud that she paid $5 for it, and she's still using it today, despite the inconvenience and just the ugliness of how easy it is to put 3 or 4 things in it, and it's already overflowing. And the rinsing side, nobody in my family ever did that. So get rid of that divider and make the tub twice as wide, and you won't have all the big pans and stuff sitting sideways, sticking out of the sink. Simple. Now, my mother decided that was a good enough way to live her life, and I decided that's not good enough for me. And her attitude was, we all can't be rich like you. I said, Mom, that's not being rich. I've had some rich clients, and they have these fancy ceramic farm-style sinks that, the whole counter is built around. Recessed refrigerators that match the cabinets. Sub-Zero, Viking, Thor, these massive, expensive appliances. This is not what this is. It's a $200 sink at Home Depot. You literally drop it in. It's really easy. There's no reason to continue living your life this way. She did not see a problem with it where I did. All right? So we don't have to agree on that. I have a different set of values and expectations because I didn't like it as a kid, and I don't have to live that way. I choose to not live that way as an adult. It's how ingrained into me that is. So when I hear people holding on to the older tech, Mitch says he's got the original Star Wars movies on Laserdisc. I have 2 friends that still have those big Laserdiscs. There's a nostalgia to them only because they're less common than DVDs, right? Because DVDs are everywhere, or they used to be. And now they were in such abundance, they don't really have any value. Laserdiscs have almost become nostalgic collector's items in and of themselves. So I don't, if you've got that because of what it is, right, as an antique, I'm all for it. But if that's your primary source of watching Star Wars, you could do so much better using the internet and just streaming Star Wars in much better quality than that Laserdisc has ever. I mean, it was good. It was fantastic for its time. And today, it's a conversation piece. But I don't know that I would personally want to watch Star Wars on a Laserdisc, on a high-definition TV that's going to show every flaw. There's better versions. But again, that's just me. Picard said there's a lot of stuff not on Blu-ray globally. Yeah, and there's going to be more and more as Blu-rays become less and less popular. It's all going to be streamed. The future is going to be moving away from all of this stuff that's going to go in the landfill. You want to buy Blu-rays and DVDs, you know those are going in the landfill, right? It's just time. One way or another, that's going in the landfill. When we're streaming, that's far better for our ecology. It's also better for any sort of hoarding, because now you're hoarding it digitally versus holding atoms in your hand. The plastics in manufacturing and all of the emissions that produces into our environment, all you're doing is you're encouraging this landfill stuff. Now, everything that you're buying outside of food is all going into the landfill sooner or later. Everything. Everything. So the minute we stop all this consumerism of, I got to have it for me, mine, once we lose this mentality and we realize we can all share and it makes more sense, it's better for us financially, it's better for us for our ecology, then we'll start to improve the quality of life on this planet. But as long as we continue to hoard this consumerism, I've got to have a copy of Star Wars and you've got to have and you've got to have your copy, all this is all going into the landfill. Just telling you. I can't say when, but the thing that you value the most now, if there's nobody else in your family that agrees with that, and even if there is, eventually it's still going in the landfill. All you're doing is postponing it. And by buying it, you're encouraging the production of it, which continues to perpetuate the very problem we're all trying to work for together, hopefully, to make the world a better place, to make the air we breathe cleaner. So long as we continue this one habit, we're always going to have that consequence. And streaming not only makes it more convenient, oftentimes the quality is better, it saves you money, and, well, maybe Netflix doesn't carry it this month. So what if I'm in the mood to watch Star Wars this month and it's not on? Oh no, is that the biggest problem you have in your life? Let's trade places. I can't watch Star Wars this month. I got to go to the hospital for that. What's wrong? I was trying to watch Star Wars and it wasn't available on Netflix this month. Get this guy into the ER, stat. I grew up differently, man. I know I'm sounding like an old man, but seriously, you got that much time on your hands? All right, it's all good. Kelly Stewart said at one time he had a 1-inch video recorder. Hey, those were expensive. Remember how good Betamax was? Not by today's standards, not good at all. Remember how good cassette tapes sounded? Oh, they never sounded good. It was just that the headphones were bad. It's one thing if you're holding on to novelty items. You know, there's some nostalgia. Hey, this is a reel-to-reel tape deck that my dad used to play when I was growing up, and I'm going to hold on to it. Oh, I totally get that. But this is every single tool my dad ever owned, plus all the tools I own. And now suddenly you can't find anything and everything's a mess unless you have a lot of room to put stuff like that. And there's got to be, you know, for me, a balance between what's practical and what's emotional. So I tend to be more practical overall, and that should be pretty obvious. I have very few emotional attachments to any physical things. But there are a few, right? There might be maybe a ring my father would wear all the time, and I'll keep that ring. But when I go, nobody's going to know what that ring is for or care. So it'd probably be sold for scrap. I understand that. I accept it. It's only special to me. Nobody else in the family wants it. So I'll take it. But it's little stuff, you know? If there's something I want, I'll go and get it. And I don't expect anything I buy to last forever, because I don't want to have life be so boring. If I just bought something when I was 18 and I'm still using it today, I feel like I'm holding myself back. You know, my Microsoft Zune might still be working fine, but I don't want to use it. No, I'd rather just use my phone and make life a little better rather than freeze framing the past. I don't know, that's just me. Patrick T says, Ladder 49, I bought it since it's never on streaming. The entire series of Emergency. Those were some of the worst television shows in history. Like, I grew up watching Emergency, or I think it was sometimes called Emergency 1, and if I never see it again, I'm totally fine with it. I've never even seen it in reruns where I've been flipping through the channels and went, oh, I want to watch this. Because if I had, after about 90 seconds, I'd say, well, I've had enough of that, because that's some pretty terrible TV. But hey, if that's what you like, you know, you spend your money however you want. I just can't. I can't. It's so terrible. Richard Claiborne. That's the gentleman we were just talking about with the build that we did. And Richard says, the computer is 1,000 of my DVDs in the landfill. Well, sadly, Richard, that's the reality, right? Everything that we have on our computers, if you were to, let's say you have 1,000 DVDs and you rip them onto your hard drive, even an NVMe drive that's this big. The difference is, if the NVMe drive goes in the landfill, it's going to take up that much room. 1,000 DVDs, you know, I don't have to show you this, right? You know this. And if that's how you want to spend your time, who am I to tell you you're doing anything wrong? It's not meant to be an insult. It's not meant to be in any way personal. It's just, for me, not a logical way to spend my time. I'm also in a different generation than you. And I'm also still working. I'm not retired. So I can't imagine me and my personality not always having something productive to do that benefits the community. I wouldn't start a collection of anything that was just for me. If I started a collection, it would be for a museum. It would be something, if I can't share that with the community, then I don't want to spend my time doing, that's the way I see life. Other people, They find things. I'll give you an example. I had a person that was retired, that lived alone, and their solitaire on their computer stopped working. And they called me in a panic. And they said, I know solitaire may not sound like it's a big deal. This is all I have. If I can't play solitaire, I'm staring at the walls. There's nothing on TV I'm interested in. I don't really have many friends here. I don't have much family left. I probably don't have much time left. So please understand that when I tell you my solitaire is down, all of the quality of my life is gone. This is all I have. What am I going to say? I don't agree with them. You could write a book. You could do something productive. You could write the story of what it was growing up and about your parents and just leave that as a document for the people that come after you and your family. And yet that just doesn't occur to them, or they don't want to. Just want to play solitaire. Okay? Okay. They've accepted that fate. That's what they've chosen. And that's what they're asking me to do, and I'll do it. I don't agree with it. But that's not my responsibility. Jay Main said there's a lot of bad reviews for Beijing SSD NVMe drives on Amazon. Well, don't buy them. It's a real easy solution. Do not buy them. I would strongly recommend you do not buy those drives. If you're worried about what strangers on Amazon say versus a reputable, working, verifiable computer technician who's worked as a radio show host, demonstrated over 30 of them on live videos over the years, and if you choose to think that the value of information I offer you is of equal value to random strangers on Amazon that could be coming from competitors or people who don't know what they're doing, please do us both a favor and do not buy one. See, some of these solutions are real easy. Richard's a great guy, by the way, just to be clear. I really like Richard. He's a super guy. I can't get behind how he chooses to invest his time, and that's not my business. My job as a computer tech is to provide the customer what they want. But if what a customer wants is sometimes making life more complicated, or it's going to result in more support, I will try and guide the customer into a platform that's less complex. So you're likely not going to have any issues, avoidable problems. The key word is try. At the end of the day, if a customer insists this is what they want, then I have to decide what my support risks are. If I give the customer exactly what they want, and that results in the computer's always crashing, you don't know what you're doing, and I'm constantly doing warranty work that I can't get paid for, the customer's not happy and I'm not happy. And the customers that are waiting for me with cash in hand going, I need you to fix my problem, and I'm still revisiting an old thing I got paid for, I have to weigh that in my head. I've got to do the math and decide if what the customer wants could put me out of business or risk that. And if the answer is yes, then I will say, maybe I'm not the right tech for you. And so Richard and I were going back and forth with what Richard wanted and what I could do. And then the information slowly got changed. I was given more information later that I didn't have up front that I knew nothing about. And now what we agreed on started to shift. And I started to have some concerns that what else is going to be a surprise? What other information has been omitted that I don't have? And when I build a computer for somebody, I'm held accountable for it. I take it very seriously. So the minute the landscape changes, the more information is provided that wasn't agreed upon before, then I start growing concerned. And I'm not saying it's done on purpose, and it may be that I didn't ask all the right questions when we began. I could have been more thorough. And Richard and I initially initiated this with nothing more than text messages. We hadn't even spoken on the phone until after things had changed. And that's when I said, hold on, we need to talk, because the texting was constant miscommunication between what I was saying and what he was hearing, and what he was saying and what I was hearing. And so we had this moment where I said, this all may be a big mistake. You know, I might not be the right tech for you. The distance between us is such, it's going to make it very difficult for me to help you. If you were right down the street, it'd be no big deal. And my concern was, as I'm learning more and more information that was provided after we had already started the project, combined with how terrible this Fractal G case turned out to be, which I didn't know, the Focus G from Fractal Design. I didn't know. Now I do. Things started dwindling down, and I was worried how we're going to stop this downward spiral and get this level, because that's what I do for my clients. And there was a moment where we had to talk about, what are your expectations? Right? Let's be clear. You know what I'm capable of doing and how I'm limited from the distance. And as I'm getting more information that wasn't volunteered to me earlier, it started changing what I understood the customer wanted. And I grew very concerned that I was putting myself in a really bad liability situation. And Richard and I had that discussion. It's not a fun discussion to have, because it would be better off to know all of this up front. And it's my responsibility as the tech to gather that information. If a customer is withholding information, they may not be aware they're doing that. The only way, in many cases, because, you know, when you're working with somebody you've never worked with before, you don't know them, you've got to be very thorough in your questioning of understanding what the customer's needs are and exactly what it is we're about to do before we begin the work, to understand how much work is involved, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and whether or not I can support that. So if somebody is adding information after the build is started, we've already agreed, the agreement's done, and now they're saying, well, what about this and what about that? And you're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? We never talked about that before. We didn't? No, this is the first I've heard. That information would have been good to know a few days ago. Let's get on the phone and talk. And then something else comes up. Well, what about this? Hold on. Wait a minute. Now that's two things we never talked about before. And I'm 3/4 of the way done with the build, and now this new information. This is not something I deal with my managed service providing, because I work with these clients regularly. But when it's a brand new client and I'm not there to assess what they've got. Let me give you an example. If Richard was my neighbor, I could go to Richard's house and he can show me his computer. He can show me this room full of DVDs, like as far as the eye can see, I guess, I don't know. But I could get a scope or a scale of it. And I can look and I could say, well, what are these drives over here? You never talked, what are these for? What's all this over here? What's all this stuff attached to the computer? I can ask those questions because I can see them. But when I'm talking to somebody on the phone, I don't know. I can't see what's in their room. I can't tell if they have older equipment, newer equipment. I can't tell if there's more to it and they just haven't told me because it hasn't occurred. I'm not suggesting anybody does this on purpose. There'd be no benefit. It just hasn't occurred to them. So these kind of blind sides are very discouraging, because just as I think I'm finishing, we have to go backwards now to deal with whatever this other information is. And if I had that information earlier, I would have taken a completely different approach. As a result, and again, it's nobody's fault. If anybody, it's my fault, because I need to be the one asking the questions. But if I'm not there looking at it and they're not volunteering it, it's going to come up sooner or later once they realize, oh, what about this? Well, we never talked about that. Now what do we do? The computer's 3 hours away. That's going to be a pissed off customer. I don't want a pissed off customer. And Richard's happy, don't get me wrong. But my concern was, what if? Because normally if the customer's upset, I just remedy it right then and there. But if the customer's 3 hours away or further, my hands are tied. It's like not much I can do. So that was a little more challenging than I was expecting it to be. But again, if anybody's to blame on that, it's me. I should have been more thorough in my questioning, and I should have never agreed over text messages. We should have spoken at the very least before any work began. I just felt like everything we needed to say and agree to was done in text. There was no reason to talk. But that's where I made a mistake. But in the meantime, the job got done. It was a bit sloppy in the way that we had to, order a different case and the other case back, redo the work again, address some other issues that hadn't been brought up before, which led to some frustration on his part and my part. But we got through it. And to the best of my knowledge, he's a happy camper and everything's good. He's a good guy. I like Richard. So I don't want anything I'm saying to be misconstrued. John Williams said he has used NVMe and SSD storage drives from Beijing and he loves them. They're good quality. All I'm suggesting, John, is if someone comes in and says anything where they're expressing anxiety about something unfamiliar to them, I'm not a representative of Beijing. It matters not to me if they buy one or they don't. I honestly don't care. If you have any concerns about quality or you think or believe that that is going to be a bad purchase, do us both a favor and don't buy it. Because all you're going to do, if you have that mindset getting into it, is wait for the hammer to drop. And the minute that happens, if it happens, you're going to say, I knew it all along. I knew it. And they're going to look to blame somebody, right? They need to take responsibility for their decisions. Don't blame me. You decide to buy something, and that thing has a problem. You're the one who made that decision. You're the one to blame, not me. If you're buying something from me and I am selling you something, then you can blame me. But so long as I'm offering you free information and you're looking for some guarantee or warranty or a place to put blame, no, absolutely not. You can take the information that I would normally charge a consultation for and dismiss it as valueless, or you can say, hey, unlike those people that are reviewing on Amazon, this is a real guy with a real verifiable background. And I can see in actual live videos, he's used these drives over and over and over again. Or you may say, he's secretly working for Beijing and he's really a Russian spy. He's also 10 feet tall and he weighs 400 pounds and he's over 2,000 years old. Okay, I don't care. It doesn't matter. So don't even let those kind of people who believe that way infect you and take their bait. It's not a game I'm going to play. The information's there. You can choose to accept it. You can choose to dismiss it. Either way, you're not paying me any money for that. So I hold no responsibility to your decision making. And if you're convinced that it's a scam or the product is bad, then you will do us both a favor by not buying it. I don't need to convince you. I'm not interested. I don't care. If you're a customer of mine, I do care. Let me be clear. If you're my customer, I care very much. Old Man 55 said there's too much of a chance of misunderstanding by phone or text. In person, you can see face and body language and tone of voice. Well, that's true. Yeah. And again, if it was somebody I had known, right, but, I never talked to him before, and we did everything over text, and I thought it was all good. But in the end, we made it good. right? Everybody's happy, and it's sort of a reminder for me that if I'm going to do that again, I need to be very, very clear right out of the gate that once we've talked about these things, the minute you start adding more items or making changes, then you're changing the whole agreement. Like everything else has to change with it. In my case, I really wanted to help Richard. I wanted to get the system out to him. I wanted to get him a really good deal because we have a lot of hardware laying around here. So it's a win for him and a win for me. And, initially we were looking for a case that had 2 optical drive bays. They're just really hard to find now. And ordinarily I'd just use a Corsair 200R. It would have been a perfect case for Richard, but I didn't have any. And so that's where we were at. And this is a problem that will only get worse with time, because if people want to insist on having this older equipment, it's harder and harder to find case manufacturers and equipment makers that still make it. Not impossible. The question is, does it make sense to provide that on a professional level, or is that more of a hobbyist activity? And that's a decision for each business owner to make. But we certainly hope that Richard is happy, that he's got, I hope what is the best computer he's ever owned, and it will last him for a very long time and be trouble-free. And if not, he's always able to reach out to me at any time for any help, no differently than anybody else. We just had a little trouble in the process. That's not normal for me and how I run my business. And so, again, the only one to blame on that is me. I should have been more thorough. But nonetheless, I think the end result is good. It just took a little more time than I really thought it was going to, and everything I gauged prices and my schedule on was based on a fairly simple build that got a little more complicated as we went along. But that is part of the business, right? Everything happens for a reason, and I'm sure Richard and I crossed paths because we had something that each other needed. And even if that was a little bit rough, it was probably necessary in this case. That's okay. Like I say, he's a good guy. I really, really like Richard. I also like when I have a really good understanding of what the customer wants, and I'm using familiar parts. And when I'm using familiar parts, it usually goes together easily. The minute I start using different parts, I'm in for some surprises. So that was where it was getting a little challenging. Is something I thought should be a 5-minute job was taking far longer due to a combination of almost a comedy of miscommunication. And in the end, it's not a big deal. It really isn't. It's not like I regret it. I'm absolutely delighted to have been able to help Richard, and I'm delighted to get to know Richard. And that's ultimately what the business is about. It's about the relationships you build. It's not about the systems I sell. It's the idea that I get to know people, and I'm not just handling people as though they're, a customer in a grocery store. You never see the same customer twice. You're just processing. Getting to know people and building those relationships is key to almost every business if you want to be successful over a long period of time. If you're going to choose to treat everybody as anonymous strangers, you may not get a lot of repeat business. Mike's Unboxing says his 14700K is toast. I can't even install Windows. Even the BIOS is a bit laggy and doing weird stuff. He says 14th gen is such a disappointment. I haven't seen a bad one. I haven't had a bad Intel processor in years. But, it happens. Certainly it happens. Mike had mentioned there were some heat issues on AM5 sockets, and I've not had that either. Did you ever get those issues resolved, or what was the... I never followed up with you on that, on the AM5 problems that you were having. Bajin guy's asking if Mike's Intel 14700K is still under warranty. Why wouldn't it be? They're brand new, right? I mean, the 14 series just came out. So even if you bought one on the day it came out, it should still be under warranty. Wouldn't it? What's a standard warranty on those? Isn't it like 3 years? Intel 14th gen CPU warranty. 5 years. The 14th generation CPU warranty has been extended by 2 years due to stability issues, meaning it now offers a total of 5 years of coverage for both boxed and tray processors, and this applies to all 13th and 14th generation Intel Core desktop processors globally. So if the 14th generation processor came out, let's see, let's just do the math. 14th gen release date was October 17th of 2023, then you're under warranty at least until October 17th of 2028. So I'm going to say yes, he's well under warranty. James Bond said, I'd go 13th gen, but not 14th. There's too many issues. A 14th gen is a 13th gen processor. I don't know if you know that, but they're the same CPU. So to suggest that one is more problematic than another suggests to me you don't realize they're the same chip. Do you? It's not actually a 14th gen. 14th gen is really just 13th gen. I've had taken issue with that because normally when Intel says something's a new generation, it means it's a different node. But here it isn't. They lied. They completely deceived the public by calling that a 14th gen. It was sort of like 13th gen part 2. It's the same node. It's the same processor. That's why they have the same problems. That's why the warranty on 13th and 14th, it's all marketing manipulation. It should be 13th and 13th, but, you know, what are you going to do? We try our best to provide information to our viewers because the bottom line is if you believe these marketing companies, you're going to have a lot of misinformation. And so what we're trying to do is just put the facts out there so that you have a better understanding of why these problems exist, what this means, and what you should probably expect. The vast majority of 13th and 14th gen processors that were made by Intel have had no problems. There is a small percentage of them, larger than normal, but still relatively a minority of computer processors that are sold that are 13th and 14th gen that have had some problems as a result of motherboards overvolting them in most cases. And while partially this was to blame from the motherboard manufacturers, it was also a bad part in the manufacturing process that was determined to allow these voltages that cause this much harm. As a result, Intel's extended the warranty and motherboard manufacturers have updated BIOSes so that if you weren't affected by this before, it's long been solved and it's no longer a problem. But you can still get a bad CPU that has something else entirely wrong with it. There's other reasons CPUs fail besides this. So while there is a large number of those falling in this category, there's still the regular reasons CPU fail, and they're still pretty rare. The disproportionate number of CPUs that were failing due to this particular issue in this particular generation of chip is still a minority. The vast majority of CPUs sold, 13th and 14th gen, never had a problem. Just like you hear about planes that crash, but you never hear about the ones that land safely, because do you have any idea how many planes land safely around the world every day? Tens of thousands every single day. But one anywhere in the world crashes, we hear about it, and then you might think air travel's not safe, but you don't have all the data. You just have selected tiny piece of the data. And it takes more than that to come up with an accurate conclusion and assessment if accuracy matters to you. Mike's Unboxing says apparently he got the CPU from a company called CCL there in the UK. He said they're not a very good company to buy from here, but it was cheap, and now I get to regret my decision. But it shouldn't have to do with CCL, Mike. You should be able to deal with Intel directly. The retailer at this point doesn't need to be involved. This should be between you and the manufacturer. And it should, the warranty should be honored, unless I'm misunderstanding. James Bond said, I wasn't aware Intel lied. They all lie. AMD lies all the time. If you want to call them lies, they're marketing. It's what marketing companies, every commercial you see on TV is lying to you. If that's how you define lying, why are you selecting Intel? Any commercial you see on TV is manipulated to get a certain perspective across. It's not there to give you 100% objective truth. It's there to sell you a product. In that case and in that perspective that you have, every commercial lies to you. Every marketing company lies to you. You're not getting scientific objective data from the manufacturer of the product. It's just not in their best interest to paint it any other way than rose-colored. You know, this is always good. It's the best we've ever done. They're trying to stay in business, keep their employees employed, and get you to buy their products. They're not there to insult themselves. What kind of business model is that? Phil Stott said for his peace of mind, he replaced a 14700K with a 12500 with no E-cores. And when I bought the parts, all I could find was K processors. See, this is what just eats me alive, is people building and making purchasing decisions based on their feelings and based on the information that is highly inaccurate and in fact quite toxic that you're seeing online, especially on YouTube. So much bad information. It may be true that there are some of these processors that have these problems in greater numbers than any processor that came before it, but it is also true, and it isn't being said, that the vast majority of them don't have this problem to begin with. So the idea that your anxiety resulted in you replacing a perfectly good working part that never would have failed so that you could buy a lesser part with the thinking, the logic being that it would be better, less likely to fail, is complete illusion. It is totally subjective information. It's not objective, it's not scientific. It's based on feelings. And if that's what you want to do, you absolutely can do that. But I can't run my business based on feelings. I have to run my business based on what is going to keep my customers happy, give my customers the best value, and keep my customers referring me. I have to have these standards, and I can't base these standards on my feelings. They have to be based on facts. And so for that reason, when I'm making decisions on what I'm buying, I have every intention that what I'm buying is going to meet my needs. So when I get surprised or blindsided by that Black Widow case or that Sama case, I feel betrayed. I feel like I'm an idiot, that I shouldn't have known better. But it's not because of what somebody said online. It's not because of some article I read. It's because of an actual experience I had. So if you had a bad experience with your 14700K and then you did something, I'd be 100% behind you. But this idea that you somehow rewarded yourself by avoiding a problem that you likely would have never had and never did have, I can't wrap my head around it. Phil says, he's continuing, he says that my time was, his thought at the time, my thought was that Intel had fixed the early problems, my bad. I just find that confusing. Again, you're free to make whatever decision any way you want to. I just think that's completely avoidable and unnecessary. But, maybe for you it isn't. I don't know. Mike's Unboxing says it was a great deal for that 14700K, only 199 pounds, reduced from 349, 350 pound. Good price, just a shame it didn't work out of the box. I wonder if it's counterfeit. Have we ever, in any of my live videos, seen a bad CPU out of the box, AMD or Intel? I don't think it's ever happened. It's possible. On the other hand, if I was sourcing my CPUs from a questionable source, probably more likely. I've, purchased a few CPUs like the Threadripper upgrade and the that AMD Zen upgrade from eBay as used processors, and I'm always nervous about it because you just don't know. It's like, did somebody sell me something broken? Did somebody sell me something counterfeit? I hate that anxiety. I'd much rather pay a few dollars more to have peace of mind. But if the price is right, hey, you know what? I'll take the risk, I hear you. So again, I base what I do on actual experience, or if I have a specific trusted source of information, which there aren't many, right? But there's a few out there. And there are people that have a reputation in the industry that I have known have no clue what they're talking about, and I don't listen to them. And there are people that have a long reputation in the industry that are very, very accurate, and I agree with their assessments. And so if I'm gathering information, the first thing I need to know is the source. If the source of the information is a source I am familiar with and in the past have had good experience in having similar experiences with that source is a pretty darn good replacement for experience. Not quite as good, but pretty darn good. The bad decisions I have made with the Sama case or the Black Widow case, I did no research on them other than the marketing materials on the site, and based my purchase decision on that. They could have been returned within 30 days had I gotten to them within that time period, which I did not, and they didn't cost that much money. And it may be worth it just for the content that some things don't go as planned. Maybe it's worth it to just make my life miserable so you don't have to, so that you will have better expectations about if you decide to purchase these cases. Again, I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying if I would have known this beforehand, I wouldn't have bought it. Now that I bought it, we're going to make a video from it. And in that process, without any sort of rehearsals or scripts or preparation, everything blindsided me, or there were some things that were unacceptable. Now I know. And you might say, well, I don't think that's a big deal. I'd buy it. Well, go ahead. I'm not telling you not to. I'm saying based on the standards I need to have to be a regular, sustainable customer service expectation from my clients, this won't meet that. And I want it to. I didn't do it on purpose, and I'll learn from it so I don't do it again. And that's far better than any article I could ever read. Now I know, and it costs me money, just like school costs money. I'm hoping this is costing me less. But the education is very valuable. For better or for worse, we're setting expectations and understanding better what we're getting for the money. And it's not good enough for me. At least the Black Widow case and the Samba case. No. We'll use them because we have them versus just putting them in a landfill. We will use them, but we'll put some older motherboards in there where that kind of detail doesn't matter, and I won't support it and my name won't be on it. I don't like doing that, but I also don't like needlessly throwing stuff away. So we'll make best case use out of it. Somebody will get a decent computer That's probably no worse than what they sell at Best Buy anyway, because none of that stuff's at my standard anyway. Or either, is what I meant to say. Mike's Unboxing said he just tried another set of DDR5 and it's actually installing Windows now. First set of Corsair and 2 sets of Thermaltake Tough RAM wouldn't let me install Windows at all. What motherboard is it? I think we're going to wrap it up here. We've certainly gone long today, but I really enjoy sharing my experiences with you and sharing the perspective from a working computer tech versus the typical enthusiast info that you're accustomed to here on YouTube. Not that it's bad. It's just there's a lot of omitted information that doesn't apply to enthusiasts, but it's very common for enthusiasts to want to be computer techs. And if you do want to be a computer tech, I want you to have a good understanding of what the business is so that your expectations will be met rather than be blindsided and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Some people say, I would never be a tech. It's a terrible line of work. I disagree. I love being a tech. I love the challenges that I face. It either gets sometimes boring and I lose interest, I start to lose interest, or it can get frustrating and I start to get frustrated that something perhaps simple or avoidable, I should have, mad at myself. I could have avoided this, but it's a learning lesson. And ultimately, that's preventing me from being bored. And between the balance between boredom, where everything goes like it should, and frustration, where nothing's going right, somewhere in the middle, that balances out to always keep me coming back for more. I love what I do. I love to help people, especially people that appreciate it. And while sometimes getting to the resolution can be a little bit of a challenge, it's always worth it to me. So for anybody that says, oh, it's a terrible career, they have a bad attitude. And as long as they have that attitude, they are 100% right. It is a bad career for them. And if you share that attitude, it's a bad career for you too. But if you appreciate the variety of the work, if you appreciate that you're helping people, right? If that matters to you, there's very few careers in this world I can think of that I can do where I'm able to have such a satisfaction of fulfillment in being able to put together something I know is of good quality, that I'm not gouging my customers like other people do, that I'm presenting something that I know I would use myself and would be proud to own and proud to brag about if I owned it. That's what I do for my customers. And anything less than that, anything that's close enough or good enough, isn't good enough for me. That's why I'm so driven, because everything has to be at a certain standard. Otherwise, it's too easy and it feels dishonest. I didn't give it my best. I could have done better. I never, ever want to say that to a customer. Oh, well, I built this for you, but I could have done better. No, this is not the right line of work for you. But an enthusiast might say that. I built the system for myself, but I could have done better. But it's yours. You can do whatever you want. When somebody's paying you, I want to make sure they understand I am giving them my best, and I'm going to charge them hopefully less than anybody else would charge who doesn't have that sense of pride. What other career could I be doing that in where I get that fulfillment and, that I'm capable of doing? For me, there is no better career for me than being in IT. So a lot of it's just attitude. Mike's Unboxing said he spoke too soon, computer crashed again. See these frustrations? These are the things that keep us coming back. If it all installed fine, it probably would have been boring and he'd have no story to tell. This is a 14900. It's got no problems, I don't know. Obviously, if people have problems, they're going to be more vocal about it. But we do these live and unscripted. We haven't seen a bad one yet. I don't know. Maybe it's the luck of the draw. But we also buy from reputable sources. I don't take risks unless it's something used and really cheap. And then, of course, I knew that when I bought it. So with that, I think it'll wrap it up for me today. I've got the cooler that we'll revisit once that arrives, and the little LCD screen will go in this. So we're going to see this again at some point, maybe after the holidays. I don't know. Whenever the parts come in and we have the time. I have another build to do tomorrow. We still have the Z890 build to finish up. And we've got another Ultra 7 build. And then we've got Mitch's old motherboard to put into the Sama case. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. So I hope you'll join us. We'll be back live tomorrow at 1 o'clock as always. Always love the interaction and to share stories with you guys. And I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you again for all of our contributors, to all of our members, for everybody joining us in the chat, interacting with us. We appreciate having you here, even if we don't share the same attitude towards certain things. That's good. That's what makes us all different and unique. I just wanted to go in my email one more time to say thank you again to Charlie Purdy and Mark Gaines and Paul Gray. Of course, thank you to Buster as always. Oisting, Frankie B, everybody in green in the chat, everybody in white in the chat, our friend Richard, our friend Mitch, everybody, thank you for hanging out with us today. We'll see you all again tomorrow. I hope you'll join us. Until then, bye for now.